Welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many people here. This meeting will be recorded and subject to the recording being a suitable quality will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel via a link on the Council website. Councillors and staff and members of the public, if you have your cell phones on, please turn them off or on silent. Health and safety, the emergency exits from the supplements are at the front of the building and also behind me. If we need to evacuate the building, please use one of these exits and assemble on the playground outside and remain there until the building has been confirmed clear. Information. Councillor Hay, would you like to read the information?
We pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skill, wisdom and judgment throughout discussions and deliberations ahead of us today in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of the South Wairarapa district at large. Okay, I'm sorry. We commit individually and as a council to the principles of integrity and respect and to upholding the vision and values we have adopted in our long-term plan to energise, unify and enrich our district.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. This many people, it is advisable if you could speak up. Do we have any apologies? No apologies? Conflicts of interest. A2, are there any conflicts of interest? Fine. Acknowledgements and tributes. Are there any acknowledgements or tributes?
Firstly, I'd like to pay tribute. We lost one of our mana whenua kaumātua, Langi McGregor, who was a huge part of this area and is mana whenua to Waihinga, and also to an absolute stalwart to our community, Alan Stiles, who passed away last week, and would just like to note down his family is a big part, and he did all of the plumbing for Hauriki Marae, getting it set up. We wouldn't have our marae without people like him who volunteered their time and actually made those things happen. And when DIY Marae came to Martinborough for the Hauriki Marae, they even mentioned how good the plumbing was after 30 years. So I just really wanted to pay tribute to Alan Stiles and the work that he's always done in this for the Martinborough community at large. Kia ora.
Thanks, Councillor Maynard. Any other acknowledgements or tributes? Right. Now move on to public participation. We have 4 presenters today. I will remind the presenters and the public that this is a meeting held under the standing orders which are available on our website. It is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. So I'd like to call Lee Carter to make her presentation to council. Welcome. You have, I think you know the drill. You have 5 minutes.
Talking on concerns of council communications relating to the recent rate rise. When people ring the council to understand their rates bill, it's not helpful that council staff become angry with customers and tell people that they should be grateful that they don't live in Carston because their rates are higher than ours. Please address this. As a ratepayer, I don't agree with the council communications inviting people who are unhappy with their rates to meet with Harry Wilson, the CE. Private meetings with the CE are not transparent. Instead, people should be directed to the complaints policy and process so there is an official record of people's concerns. This is an audible record designed for improving the council's performance. I support the request by the chair of the Featherstone Community Board, Mark Shepherd, who's in the audience there, that we hold a public meeting addressing public concerns. Public meetings in all 3 towns would be helpful for people to come to terms with the shock of their recent rate rise. I would like this to be discussed at the action for participation today. Council have justified the recent rate rise for 3 reasons: the QBs, LTP and GWRC. Yet during the LTP consultation, there was no communication of 2 of these factors. It doesn't bode well that council defend the rate rise post the LTP, yet not prepare people for sufficient information on these factors during the LTP consultation process. There is little point giving a breakdown of detail of why people's rates have skyrocketed after a public consultation. I call negligence on this approach. Throughout your many months of LTP planning, surely there was a conversation around this table on how you can make things affordable for people, taking into consideration the October 2020 increase in land value, the proposed GWRC rate rise, and the feedback from the LTP. Your prudent decisions have had serious impacts on many people, especially the elderly and pensioners. The main message from people is they didn't get enough notice on how massive their rates were going to increase. We're not just talking $100, $200 or $300, but $600, $700, $800 and even $1,200 annual increase. The following are concerns from members of the public who can't be here today. An elderly couple in Martinborough who are worried about how they're going to pay their rates now in the future. They are proud people and they will go without heating and other necessities to pay the rates. Their neighbour in Martinborough, a 92-year-old on his own on the pension, has to find $190 extra a quarter on a fixed income. Another elderly couple in Featherston say they have to find $113 fortnightly to pay for their rates and they're on the pension. A lady from Featherston who is very annoyed about this rate rise says, I've been a ratepayer for 50 years. Now being on the pension, we don't get enough to pay rates, insurance, power, phones and the things we need. What is this council doing getting rid of older people in our town? Where are we to go? I've lived here since 1959 and now they don't want us. A younger lady in Martinborough was shocked after opening the mail, her mail, and told her husband that she would have to return to work earlier than planned from maternity leave to pay the rates. Being on maternity leave, they carefully planned their finances and she said the rate rise of 22% was most unexpected, a stark difference of 14 as proposed in the LTP. They have to find an extra $226 per quarter amongst paying insurance, power and general living expenses. A lady in Martinborough likened the rate rise to taking your car for an annual general checkup and picking it up and being charged $2,000 on work needed without notice. She's also concerned about the school roll. It is very low due to people leaving town because they just can't afford to live here. The school cannot afford to lose more students. She says the school is a real issue and the rate rise will have a ripple effect. Many people are scared, frightened and angry. Is this how you want our people to live? Putting aside the needs to address our failing infrastructure and the continuous blame of previous councils, you all here at this table are responsible for your actions. Your actions have put real pressure on lower income families already struggling to live. Ultimately, you have failed the people you are here to represent with poor decision-making and lack of critical information and communication to prepare us one of the biggest rate rises and rate increases in the history of this council. During future annual plans and LTPs, you need to find a better way to communicate the whole picture, not just part of a picture to your story. As many have said, who actually really takes notice of what the council does until it's too late? Please, I urge you, don't make it so late that the fabric of our tea towel turns to rags. Carrying on this way, you won't only have failing infrastructure, you will also have failing communities. We all, no matter what status we are in the community, have limits.
I repeat that. Councillors, do you have any questions of clarification for lead councillor as a result of this submission?
I think it was very clear.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to Daphne Geisler.
I'm actually going to refer to handouts, so if you could look over somebody's shoulder or pass them around, or maybe the councillors could hand those in because they would have all this information. Thanks. Can I read this? Amihi ite rangatira o te rohe. Piora e hoa maa, tena koutou katoa. Poor Daphne Geisler tōku ingoa. I want to talk about South Wairarapa rates and communications, or rates, bills and communications. The final rates agreed by you all were very different from the rates you proposed in the consultation, page 1 of the handout, and the numbers you published after you'd approved them. After consultation, you agreed what will be done and the final dollar costs, and you actually agreed some of the lower dollar cost options. That is, you identified what is required to be collected from us in rates. It all becomes official when you pass a document called a rates resolution, which you all did unanimously on June 30th. I have a copy. The Mayor stated recently, we run a land value rating system. The value of the land is the basis for our rates. No, wrong. The basis for your rates is what you agree to do and what it will cost. Land values could bottom out. And if you agree to run a work programme requiring 25% more money than last year, total rates will increase by 25%, even if land values decrease. Land value only determines allocation, and then only the 3 components of the 11 that make up the total rates. Looking at page 2 of my handout, this is created from the rates resolution you passed in June. You'll all be familiar with these numbers. It might be new to some ratepayers. You'll see 11 categories and the dollars being collected in each category. Total of 22.8 million over 17 last year. I could list all the categories and all the percentage increases over last year, but I don't have time. But I will say a couple out loud just for dramatic effect. 36%, 39%, 41%. Am I correct in stating that you all read this paper, you analysed the impact, you saw the same resulting numbers that we're seeing, and you agreed to an overall 28% increase in the total rates to be collected? Then you told us what you'd done. Well, kind of. The Mayor's summary and the numbers in the long-term plan were, handout 3 and 4, 14%, 14%, 3.9% rural. And then in the press, you had one number of 14.28%. I think the 28% was so that it had mana and we actually believed it. To publish figures like this, which your staff call average and sometimes you call indicative, no matter what, they are misleading. And in fact, they're wrong. You approved an overall dollar increase of 28%, and therefore an 8-year-old could tell you the average you're going to collect is 28%, not 14 or anywhere near 14. Why didn't just one of you around the table on June the 30th say, whoa, stop, what the heck is going on here? We've just approved 28% increase and we're going to tell people 14.28. It just doesn't make sense. Actually, that wasn't a rhetorical question. Why didn't one of you say that? But I've learned not to expect an answer. So let's take a quick look at that allocation based on land value. I'll use urban. The general urban rates, you approved 41% dollar increase. Now, if all urban people were in the same locker and were all charged the same general rate, it would be 41% increase for everyone. But I understand that there has to be an equitable methodology to divvy it up. The one currently used is allocation by land value. As land values have increased, for some more proportionate than others, it will result in a different percentage increase. But it will be a 41% overall average. The Mayor was quoted in the press just recently saying, Staff Rapper aimed to launch a rates review this year at a cost to us of about $60,000 to attempt to even out these external shocks to ratepayers. You don't get it. They're not external. The shock is that you approved 28%. You're setting a 28% overall increase and telling us it was 14. That was the shock. It doesn't take another $60,000 of our money to pretend it's something else. Yeah. Sure, the remedies available to us. but publishing a clear statement of the correct numbers, along with an admission you've published misleading numbers, might be a start. Your behaviour serves to diminish my trust in council and reinforces my lack of confidence in your abilities as our elected representatives. Please explain yourselves so you don't have others joining me in voting no confidence and no trust in this council. Naomi Louis, Kate Parta.
Councillors, do you have any questions or clarification for that?
Yeah, well, answers.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to our next speaker, Warren Woodruff.
It is obvious from the public outcry that the advertised rate increase of 14.2% was well off the mark. My rates increased 21% annually, or $768. All ratepayers are hurting, especially those on fixed incomes. No one is topping up their incomes by the same amount. In fact, added power, food, transport, insurance increases, and the situation is bleak. The present random questionnaire sent to 3,000 is a feeble attempt to gauge ratepayers' feelings on these matters. All ratepayers should have been surveyed. I, like many others, am fed up with giving my money to South Wairarapa District Council, now $4,285 every 12 months. You take $1,450 to provide me with substandard potable water and remove my wastewater, leaving a shortfall of $2,835 unaccounted for. I have no footpath, no road maintenance since my road was formed, and paid for my own rubbish removal. Who in their right mind gives $4,285 to anyone without some accountability? My 21% rate rise is not a one-off and will be followed by similar rises in the coming years. I, along with many other ratepayers, am angry and disillusioned. I'm sick of seeing pie chart graphs showing us how much our rates are apportioned to council business throughout South Wairarapa. Show me actual amounts of rates collected and expenditure in each ward. With COVID and the rising cost of living, you expect this council to practice constraint on expenditure. Not so. We have a staff structure of 80 plus employees plus shared services department district council. One shared service, Rimahanga Roads, in our roads department shows a doubling up of staff. I would have thought this to be sorted out, especially at management level with a reduction in staff. To rub salt into the wound, we have the roads department leasing a large commercial building on the main street of Greytown. There's no need for them to occupy expensive retail space, especially as there's no public access allowed. Add to this, we have a stop on sealing rural roads subsiding to a point where it's difficult for rural people to travel. Meanwhile, money wasted on painting murals on the road around Martinborough Town Square not gone unnoticed by ratepayers. The council agreed to set the amount paid into the Parks and Reserves contribution account by the developer of the Orchard Retirement Village in Greytown at a rate relating to the rural land rather than when it was rezoned residential land, which it needed to be to allow the developer to go ahead. This decision meant money going to the Parks and Reserve contribution account and therefore costing ratepayers a considerable amount of money that is urgently needed in Greytown to provide more green spaces for the increasing number of families living in Greytown. This is the reason why that account exists. Another poor decision by this council. The long-term ongoing associated costs in employing Wellington Water, along with consultants employed by them, will be very costly. There has been no attempt to undertake a cost-benefit analysis of Wellington Water versus providing our own water services or a shared service with Carlton District Council. Both these options were ignored by Council in 2019. Wellington's water approach to repairing minor leaks in Greytown hasn't gone unnoticed compared to the previously used methods by Pope and Grey. Long-term, the cost charged and accepted services in cities will be in excess of what we expect and will have to pay. The council has committed the ratepayers to another tax to be part of the Wellington Regional Leadership Group. The new rate will be used to pay for a chairperson, a secretariat of 2 to 3 people, plus travel and daily costs associated with all the mayors and every representative from Marston right round to the Horonua, adding up to 20 members plus staff. The new rate will be another cross for the suffering ratepayer to bear, with increases year on year, no doubt. This pango has the potential to grow and become another expensive drain on ratepayers' pocket. Finally, it's time for the ratepayers of the South Wairarapa and Wairarapa generally to stand up and point out that we are a separate entity from the Wellington region, geographically and economically, capable of looking after ourselves and keeping our rates at home.
Questions or clarification from Georgia? Not, then we'll move on to John Errington.
Hello, I'm John Errington. I'm an actuary and a company director. I also want to talk about rates and share some figures with the public and also with the council, although all the figures I'm deriving are readily available to each council member and certainly should have been taken into account when making their rates decisions. First of all, the total rate take this year has increased by 28%. Urban rates have increased by 34%. The average urban value has increased by 48%. And the average urban rate has increased by 23%. All this was covered in an official communication to the council, which says that according to them, the average rate has increased by 14%. 14% compared with the actual 23. They use this, they use an example which they say is commonly used for a property which has a value of 350,000. What they failed to tell you is that the property now worth 350,000 would have been worth 235,000 last year, and its rates would have increased by 23%. So even the average rate of their example is increased by 23%. In my view, as an actuary, the use of this example can be best described as misleading or deceptive or hiding behind actual property increased values. It behoves the council to be open and honest and to internally question all the numbers they're going to approve and work out examples like I have just shared with you. I invite each and every member of the council to reconsider their communication about these rates and decide to openly and honestly show the effect on each ratepayer. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Councillor. Questions on that? Could we have that your analysis?
I can share the spreadsheet with you, yes.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions? Great, thank you very much. Do we have any discussion or actions from the public participation? I must remind you that we don't get into any debate as a result of the questions as per the standing orders. Robin has. In which case we'll now move on to item A6, which is the Community Board Multi-Standing Committee report.
Public meeting. I asked for the public meeting to discuss the elections. You put on the agenda.
This is a meeting in public and shall be held according to the council's standing order.
You're aware of the public interest.
Why are you doing it at 10 o'clock?
If you would like to continue,
That's the reason it's at 10.
we will have to ask you to leave the building.
Ask us to leave then. Yes, I want to know about the public meeting. I asked
last time
about
they
the
popped up here, you were looking at the laptop on it.
Order, please.
So all he's got.
Would you like to go leave the building and look at the council standing orders, which is the way to run, a meeting of council.
You have the
Please,
choice and you've chosen not to.
if we will continue to have any disruption of the council meeting, I will be calling that adjourned.
Full public
So we
participation.
now carry on to the community board and multi-standing committee report.
Can we have public meetings?
Now has Bell Baynard, Chair of the Bassborough Community Board, here to provide us with an update on their meeting.
Alex, Brendan would like to have a discussion about
So, Mel, if we could just possibly leave you for 5 minutes, there's a request. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You can stay there. Stay there.
So are there any actions on the public notice?
I know that Lee brought it up, but we never had a chance to. One of the things that she said was that the concerns are in all 3 towns, so right throughout the South Wairarapa district, and that she wanted it looked at, that there'd be a public meeting, so public meetings in the 3 towns to give them some information with regards to the rates.
So we'll put that.
We just need to really consider it. I mean, there's a whole lot of information that's put out.
So we certainly will pass that on to our comms manager to come back to us with regards to the viability of doing that, what they achieve. Yep.
Yeah, we've received some very robust, albeit heated submissions. Nonetheless, even though there may be some facts misrepresented or distorted, I think we need to make a robust statement addressing the issues that have been raised by all submissions here. Otherwise, we're just seen as being brick walling, stonewalling valid concerns. So we do need, I believe, as a council, to engage with these concerns, in particularly the 14 v 28% dichotomy.
And that's why I asked for John's analysis, so we can let you look at.
Yes,
exactly.
The thing that most concerns me is that these people, this is their only opportunity to have to speak on these issues. They don't get any other opportunities to bring their issues forward.
Public meeting.
Certainly we saw
4 people represented a tiny percentage of people that were able to attend this meeting or even have their say.
and we'll take that into account when we look at, and certainly we can follow this up with our comms manager about the viability and what they've achieved at a public meeting. So we're not going to ignore it, but we'll certainly look at that. Yeah.
Really, could we please ask for a copy of this? Yes, presented, because they, although we took in what they were saying, it would be nice to have those to make sure that if we have a public meeting, that we address the concerns that were mentioned in those.
Certainly. That as well. Yeah.
It's actually a question about if the numbers that John has come up with, the actuary chap who just spoke to us, are exactly as they are. How did our LTP pass an audit?
I think Audit New Zealand has looked at those figures, but I think we need to examine those figures and find out why there's a disparity.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, in fact, all the figures that we mentioned. Yeah.
With Richard on this, just can't get my head around each percentage figure. Because we need to.
Look, I've just got some sums on my basis what we're talking about this, and the 450,000 that was in the long-term plan, it's absolutely bang on, with the exception of that $20.
Let's get our CFO the chance to look at that.
I think what was, can I just say, what I think was missed in the long-term plan was a little bit more discussion about the rise of land values and how that would then affect the new land values of things. So if you look at what we put into the long-term plan, and you just use lifestyle, for example, we used $450,000 example for land value. We didn't say if your land was worth $250,000, but the new rating is now $450,000, this would be your thing. And I think that's where some of the confusion has arisen in the public, because they haven't seen the effect of the value, new valuations on the ground. Certainly I'd like to Trina's view on that.
Yeah.
Through you, Chip. Have we known or been made aware that that would have been the effect? Or taken that into consideration? I think we would have made a decision.
Well, I think we need to hold that until we've had a response from the CFO regarding any specific issues raised during the public consultation. I don't want to get into debate on it, reach our understanding audits. Right.
So can I just ask, when might Katrina be in a position to give us some?
We'll get back to you on that one when she's had a chance to consider and she will let us know. Are we? Yep.
Well, just in the comments, can we also talk about the rate review? So, and whether that's, once again, is that something that should come to the public meeting to avoid this sort of confusion?
So I think we've made it quite clear that the rating review is scheduled for this year to look at it addressing the land value issue. But we can certainly ensure that it's repeated.
I mean, basically, don't make a decision at the heat of it.
No.
Right, we've had the analysis and information, so we can respond to a range of issues that were raised. We need to do that on that.
Right, so we'll go now to our next item.
Sorry, Harry, can you just clarify that? So the range of issues that you're talking about are the ones that were raised today by Lee Carter, Daphne Geisler, Warren Woodger, and John Errington, who was speaking on behalf of some of them were speaking on behalf of others, that we can actually go through.
So this is actions under public participation. There's
Could I
no discussion about the whole decision making we've made. It's simply responding to the concerns of people who have raised.
Could I also
go down to normal? The process is that we don't have the whole debate around at the table. We decide an action to actually address it. And the action is we need to go away and be able to provide a response to the issues that are there.
Excellent.
And that will clarify a lot of stuff.
Excellent. I'd still like perhaps just to keep that public meeting as one of the options.
I think we mentioned that.
Details.
Thank
you.
Can I also make one other comment, please? That I think what's really important is to bear in mind that we have spent the better part of a year and a half talking about our infrastructure and the state of our infrastructure. And what we have done is try and address those shortcomings in our infrastructure. That has then flowed into a rates bill, not the other way around.
I don't want to get into it.
I know, but it was really interesting.
Points made, but we'll carry on.
Sorry, I just wanted to finish. It was very interesting. And one of the presenters said, putting aside the infrastructure issues. Well, you can't put aside the infrastructure issues because they are the basis on which our decisions are made.
Yeah. Right. Cool. Are we familiar with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, well done.
I'm just here to speak on behalf of the Canterbury Community Board around some of the
things that were raised to us at our meeting, which we held because we are still on a 6-weekly cycle. So I understand why our minutes and things aren't included with today's information. So the Martinborough Community Board would like council's support to investigate, would like your support for council to investigate an upcycling option to help remove reusable items from the landfill in Martinborough. Featherston has a really successful resource centre, which is being managed as a private enterprise. We believe an option closer to the landfill itself and managed by council meets a number of council's own targets for climate change and reducing reusable items going to landfill. The second thing that I would like to speak on is just around the state of the rural roads at present in the Martinborough ward. We understand that there are some really large deficiencies in the numbers of the Ruamahanga roading team. With the loss of Ewan, who's always been a really huge help to us on the Martinborough Community Board, we would like to know what measures council is putting in place to ensure that it doesn't affect our rural ratepayers and residents. So we of Martinborough Community Board have shared with the Chief Executive and Mayor a number of examples of dangerous half measures which appear to have been taken for road markings. As an example, road markings only on one side of the road, and we have had another example which has been raised to us just last night, where the digger was out and only did the culverts, but didn't do the other side with the digger to remove the sand. So has actually created a huge amount of water on the side. So we just want to ensure that with that, what is understood from council, that there is that lack in the Ruamahanga roading team, that you guys are getting what you need to from that contract, but also our residents and ratepayers are getting a service in a road that can get them home at night or to school in the mornings. The third thing was just that the Martinborough Community Board would like to know whether the Ruamahanga road team and Fulton Hogan, as the contractors on site at the Hinakura roading slump, whether they've been asked for or have an opinion on the works on Hinakura Road as roading engineers managing the road itself during this time. So we've had reports come through from Greater Wellington and things like that. We wondered if on the ground maybe there might be a solution that just hasn't been sought yet. So Martinborough Community Board would like to know if they have any thoughts on repairing the road or temporarily repairing the road. That might again be a cost saving, although we also do stress that we would like alternative roads to be looked at that might be an alternative option for them when things happen or go wrong. The other thing was just around the Innovating Street Fund. So as our minutes aren't available, we just would like you to know that we do vote a motion of no confidence in council's engagement on the Innovating Street Funds with the Martinborough Community Board. And so we would also like council to please seriously consider our road safety requests that were made through the Assets and Services Committee, particularly the road safety on our pedestrian crossings, 2 of which we've reported are actually on the square but are not addressed by the Innovating Streets Fund, so, and where that has gone in. So I think that's actually a byproduct of just not having a community voice at the table, and really shows that lack within the project team. So we have also, so you are aware, we have been assured that this remains an 8-week project from the time of installation, and that any creep that occurred within the documentation, moving that to a 13-week trial, is incorrect. So we're advised by that by the Mayor and Chief Executive in our meeting. So just wanted to pass that on. It is definitely an 8-week trial from the time that is installed. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. I just, any questions you have for me?
Thank you, Mel. It's really, it's great that you've come today to give a verbal update from the community board. Just on a couple of your issues before I open it up. One on the rural roads that we actually have an action item within Assets and Services for a review of the road and efficiency and to making sure that the prioritisation of repairs is being undertaken, and I'm sure we'll get a report on that in our next Assets and Services. With regards to the Hinakura Road, that's also subject to an Assets and Services report on remediation. And I think I can assure you that I think in our meeting as well, we mentioned that definitely alternative routes are being part of the alternative service, the solution that the rating team is looking at. And also we you've received assurance from the CEO with regards to the road safety measures that you have raised, that they are part of the program that is being undertaken over the year. Councillors, any questions?
Through you, Your Worship. I did actually ask for a road crossing report, and we got to the district road crossing report. Is that also going to be given to the Assets and Services? At our last council meeting, I requested a report on the road crossing.
Recall that there is part of the speaker review, safe review commences to go into consultation. Part of that is the upgrades to Spelliston and Greytown crossings.
No. What this was in regard to was specifically that there were a number of concerns raised around the lack of lighting on the crossings around the Martinborough Square, that then morphed into a report requirement to be sent to the Assets and Services. It is minuted.
Yeah,
I'm wondering how that's being progressed.
Yeah, it's also part of the concern raised by the
Can some because it's never happened before, and I don't know what the process is. When a vote of no confidence in council for not involving the community board, as was what it was originally, the Martinborough Community Board's in that project. What are the next steps there? What happens with if a vote of no confidence is called? What do we need to do now?
Thoughts on this, or Harry?
We can only note that that's the view of the community board, and we want to work with them positively to ensure that we learn from this and make sure the process is better in the future. Mel and Aidan already had a discussion about some measures that we've put in place to make sure that this kind of situation doesn't.
So if I can just clarify that for a second, we were advised it was understood and accepted that it didn't happen. It wasn't our view. It didn't happen, and that was accepted.
So what did you
So bringing the Martinborough Community Board to the table. So we've been requesting for the project team to come since February and speak to the Martinborough Community Board, and nobody within the project team has done that. So we have tried to be engaged in this process and have been stopped. That is why we put that through, but that was accepted and acknowledged at our meeting that that was what had happened and that it wouldn't happen again. So that's but just so it wasn't a view, it was what happened.
Mel, just wanted to ask, what was the road that you were talking about that there were half measures applied to? Just
Hinakura Road. So what was happening? No, this was on Hinakura Road as you drove up, and there's actually a point where, but in this, they had put brand new road markings on the inside, but on the outside there was nothing. And so people coming up to that turn were going ahead instead of turning. So there had been a number of crashes and photos and things that were sent to us. So just where they pulled people out. This
this originally came from Council Queen's concern about black ice on a particular point. So our staff instruction was to put delineation of the line on the inside of each marker posts on the outside, and the delay was each marker post at the same time. So that was the instruction was to do both those things.
So that's the lesson again, not half measures, as we say.
The point is there were two different kinds of interventions. One was actually painting, and the other was actually installing each marker post. So you couldn't do it basically. They're different things.
enlarge on your concerns about the 8 to 13 week point?
Oh, yes, so because it had gone, just some of the innovating street information that has been going up recently has been 13 weeks. So we want to guarantee that the original 8 weeks was firm and fast. There isn't a desire, I think, for we've been told it has to.
There are comments regarding the upcycling option, which is currently occurring in the Featherston, which I think is a fantastic idea. Councillors, any thoughts on
Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. Just picking up from what Mel said, if we've got a reuse option at Featherston, then is there the potential to investigate a reuse option everywhere where we've got a site?
So if I could comment on that, I talked to Bryce this morning about this. There's two things. I mean, the request is actually for a council provided recycling facility. The Featherston is not a council provided facility. It is it's run by a recycling trust. And so, you know, when you talk to community board, obviously we have a budget to provide upcycling facility. But we can certainly make available land if there was a community organisation or group that was willing to provide that service. We definitely have a budget to provide that service. The Featherston one is quite successful and run by with Featherston Trust.
I don't think it's run by them, but at least the land.
No, it isn't.
It is run,
The message I can quote, the Featherston's, it is run by the Featherston Trust, released a commercial building land with help from Fair there. Featherston Food Bank is also positioned there. So it is run, it's run by a community. So that would be a perfect scenario where council provides a facility and there's a community group. So we would work with in the community board in that direction if that was the, but we certainly haven't budgeted to provide a staffed facility for staff for upcycling.
Yeah, that's what it is.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Just a clarification, does that get some funding through Fab Feeding from the DIA?
No, it's not that I'm aware of. I lost trust, so I do have some information on that. Fab Feeding provides grants for to purchase containers and stuff like that to store stuff in, but they don't actually fund the operations.
Could I ask
just a quick comment to Mel. Wanaka do a very good job in that area, and it's might be useful to have a look at how they manage that in terms of upcycling. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Well, we do have that, you know, the landfill is on the payment stage as well, so that is, you know, Marlborough Borough Council land, and I think it could maybe successfully be run in conjunction with the, you know, landfill and at the same time, so that there are the immediate benefits, people actually going to the tip and going, actually, we can go that way.
So to follow up from that, and I'm going to have a question because I have raised this with council. How does that impact on our contract with regards to the running of the transfer stations? Yeah. So there's a bit of a because we're in a long-term contract. And any variation comes from
exactly, that's what we just want.
Could we, or do you think we should get Melanie Bath, our climate change person involved with this?
Well, we just need to, I think it's, but the principle is, you know, to provide a staff facility. We have a budget. So, you know, so we want to talk to the community board about it. It's worth that. Have a role in waiting a community group to run a council made facilities available. You know, volunteers that type.
I was just going to say, I think if we had the facility, the people would come. People in Marlborough are like that.
But it needs people to be there.
That's right.
Well, if we're going to look at this, then we need to put the difference between things that are put out for collection for the contractors and things that people actually want to recycle. So the things that are being recycled can't actually go in the rubbish collection as they are now. If they want to put it into a recycling station, they would physically have to make the effort to take them to that facility. as opposed, because otherwise you're going to. Contract.
Yeah, and that was that's what it is.
Yeah, but I mean,
Okay.
it is frustration not to have the ability to reduce our land.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Need
I
to.
think it's a great
But we
idea.
are awaiting
Yes.
a report from officers regarding that contract, and to what extent it can be adjusted to allow for, especially with the MFE rates on landfill tripling and quadrupling at the time, which is why we've got rise with rubbish bag rises. We need to still try to reduce our landfill considerably.
I agree totally with that, because being on waste min, that's the ultimate, is not to have things go to the rubbish.
Through you, Bishop. Mel, is there a possibility of actually collaborating with, say, Greytown and actually proposing your idea towards them and seeing if they would be willing to do an upcycle as well? And you can have a upcycle in each centre. The one with Featherstone is that people actually have to go physically to the place, so it could be a point of call.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Can I add something as a community board member?
Oh,
Is that okay?
Through you now. Yeah.
yes, I'm fine.
I'd say no, Mel.
So the membership lease land with you guys.
Mhm.
Yeah. Could it be an idea that maybe a day that the membership open or is open, that things that could be recycled, repurposed, goes through them and then they say, yeah, that's fine, or no, just take it straight to the dump, that's not worthy.
I'd certainly suggest that you get the mention
Yeah, talk to them.
into the next Margaret community board meeting to discuss it. Okay. I think it's certainly a community board.
Council.
Thank you very much.
Me and you, mate, I was literally need to.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, it's slightly late, but could I have a mover to receive the minutes of the community council committees and community board reports? Thank you. Seconded, thank you, Alistair. All those in favour? Aye. All those against, the motion is carried. So, is there any other discussion from any of the committee reports? I had one, but unfortunately the reader's not here. But just questioning that there was a letter that was supposed to be tabled to the multi-standing committee. And I just wondered whether that was actually tabled to the multi-standing committee regarding the 40 weeks.
No, I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything. No.
In relation to that question, or is it a separate? I think if we just get an answer to councillors, that would be fantastic.
Jump through a couple of things.
Wait.
So we've done next.
Okay.
Can I just ask one question on the process? Greytown Community Board approved a road naming. What happens to that now? It doesn't have to come to council for approval now, does it?
No.
So that's now being just going straight off.
Was it even, is it Essex and Services?
No.
It goes straight through.
Yes.
But it comes back to council officers and straight to the Gazette exhibit.
That's right, and it goes to notification to council through the minutes.
Right. And at what stage do we close the loop back with the community board to say it's all done, it's all done, it's all done and dusted?
That's done at the community board meeting when there's approval.
Okay.
So it's gone through the maritime committee for the naming.
No, it doesn't have to. It's approved, and so there's a criteria of, there has to be 3 options. It has to have some historical reference to the towns. It's up to the developers whether they choose to go to the Maori Standing Committee or not. Yeah.
Let's just get clarification.
There's no formal process for a recommendation to the Maori Standing Committee, and the committee itself didn't feel like it was in a position to have the capability and the authority to provide information back on in that regard, and so has asked that no requests go through to the committee until it's in a position that it can provide that information.
The problem being, if I remember correctly from the Māori Standing Committee, was that there, by the time it got to there, the clock was ticking on a 21 statutory turnaround, and they would like more time to go back to their hapu to discuss it prior to coming back, and the timelines just didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry, the timelines could work. It is a matter of timing, but it would need to be a decision made very early on in the process.
Yes.
So we're looking at revising the road naming policy and some of all that is not.
The decision was devolved back to the community.
Oh,
Previously,
right.
Community Board made a recommendation to
You were trying
council,
Yeah.
and then it was devolved back.
Yeah.
There are, however, a list of names on file, certainly Greytown of Te Maori, significant Maori names that can be used.
But the Māori Standing Committee also had a problem with that because the names can be so site specific that having general names did not necessarily equate to an equitable name that they would agree to. So it did turn quite difficult.
One other one from the Greytown Community Board, the public participation, we had a presentation by Laurie Hall about roundabouts and so on, and this is on State Highway 2. Are we going to take those suggestions up as a council and make a submission as well?
Is it the community board going to make a separate submission to NZTA, or do they want us to make that submission on their behalf? But they have they made a decision as a result of the presentation?
No, we didn't.
So you need to do that before it can be considered.
By the time we do that, the consultation period will have closed for NZTA. State Highway 2. So do we as a council need to take something up on this and say, actually, we need to put a submission about State Highway 2 and this obviously applies to Featherston as well?
In which case, when we make a submission, if we have time, then it might be then to get the representatives from the Greytown Community Board in to assist in the submission to NZTA. I don't know if we've got a workshop on that.
Submissions closed at the end of yeah, so there's not a lot of time.
But we need to make sure that people are aware of this constitution and the person's making submissions.
They are doing that. There's a lot of that out in the public now, but probably a lot of weight would be carried from a council submission, particularly, and as we've talked about in the past, the roundabout by the Challenge Service Station, and there's some issues with footpaths that are going on Featherston, and the speed limit in town. Some people are saying 40 is still going to be too much when you look at Greytown, and probably I've been Featherston on the weekend for a while, but Greytown on weekends, it's pandemonium in the centre of town. And I would suggest 40 kilometres
So
you can't go 40 kilometres.
Forum to express these views, and I don't know if we can arrange a meeting of the chairs of the community boards to bring the community board's views through to a council submission if it's in TA.
We're also, there's a resolution for NZTA to come and speak to council around the constitution, not really the content around it, so it's also potentially for consolidating all that feedback as well.
Cool.
And we're still kind of struggling to get a time for that, especially before the 20th.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, we'll be informed.
And then if that happens, perhaps if each of the chairs of the community boards came.
Yeah, so
Yes.
Yeah.
they should.
Or they can add to this.
Yeah, so they can come to hear what NZTA say.
So a query about the Featherston Community Board. I've got a query about Featherston wastewater progress. Nothing's happened, and the community are asking, when are we going to get an update with regards to what's happening with the Featherston wastewater?
Because just speaking of that, if you look at 8.1, the issue raised again by Claire.
Yeah.
And I think that has presumably gone back to assets, but I haven't seen it.
So there's a workshop scheduled on the 4th of August for the council, so that we can decide on what our pathway is, and then we can.
That's not.
So I just want to reiterate that, silence is golden, and if silence is, just because it's silent does not mean that people are not talking about things. I just wanted to communicate.
I would also say, just because it's not what doesn't appear to be a lot, it doesn't mean the same thing. Certainly slower, we would all like.
Yeah.
So any other questions as a result? I'm well out of sync here with regards to doing the confirming the minutes, because I
I just make one comment with regard to the Wairarapa Library Service Committee meeting. At the top of that, it says the minutes of Carterton District Council, and that we'll have that when these minutes go for approval, that will be adjusted. But I just want to point out, isn't it's a combined meeting between the library service, which is Carterton and South
We can
District
select
Council.
that. Assuming
We can't
it's
do it here,
changed.
but we will do
we
it.
confirm it. Yeah.
And with regards to the community board, item number 11.2, tsunami and earthquake risks. I was uncomfortable with the comment that it was Greater Wellington's Regional Council's responsibility to look at planning for these events. Why would our own council not also be planning for these events?
If I comment on that, it's the Wellington Regional Emergency Management and Greater Wellington and South Wairarapa. But I think I made the comment in that meeting that we had only received that report that Claire was talking to a couple of weeks beforehand. So that will be filtering through the system. However, we are already making changes with regards to coastal retreat within our spatial plan. Mitigate some of it. So,
Just a little bit on the report, that's all.
cool. Right, so do we have a mover to receive items 2 through to 7, which are the minutes of the multi-standing committee, library service, Greytown Community Board, Fence Community Board, Photo Risk, Assets and Services, and the Planning and Regulatory. GB, seconded by Councillor Colenso. Any other further discussion?
No, I'd just like to just comment, because I see in the community board minutes it does mention about the Matariki events, and I just want to congratulate both Featherston Community Board and Martinborough Community Board for their work with the putting on the events for Matariki down at the lake, and that there was good representation. More and more people are getting involved. And I think by next year, when it does become a public holiday, it will actually be a really, really exciting event that we are blessed to have something as amazing as the Wairarapa Moana right there to be able to actually hold these. So I just wanted to congratulate both those community boards for the work that they put in there.
Right, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye.
And Greytown Community Board's Midwinter Festival, of course. Sorry, yes, that's amazing.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. Now I'll go back to A7, extraordinary business. We have my appointments report, which has been tabled, and will be discussed under agenda item. And 2 member reports from Garrett Evans, which will add in as item F4. Also, we're considering the minutes from the 30th of June 2021 meeting, which is the adoption of the long-term plan. Are there any corrections there? Do we have a mover to?
May I just ask, when 2 people aren't present and that it's put out that it was a unanimous decision, but passed by all, both myself and Councillor Vickery weren't actually there, so.
But as
a democracy.
Yeah, but
yeah, those that were present.
The apologies.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Decision on the council.
That were there.
We can't record a vote.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Who recorded as an apology?
Yeah.
So move into the minutes of the council meeting held on the 30th of June, a true and accurate record. Thank you, Rebecca. Seconded, Councillor Eames. All those in favour, say aye. All those against. The motion is carried. Right, so we're now going on to item C1, which is part of the decision reports from the CEO and staff. So the proposed alcohol control bylaw 2021 report. Do we have a move to receive the report? Thank you, seconded, Councillor Benzo. All those in favour say aye. Against, motion is carried. Karen. Right, would you like to present?
Thank you, councillors. As council knows, officers have been carrying out a review of the previous council liquor bylaws to determine whether a replacement bylaw is appropriate. And this report contains the content of that review and our recommendation, our outcome. And our conclusion is that we do recommend that we have a replacement alcohol bylaw, in which case we must consult under the special consultative procedure under the LGA, and that involves having a statement of proposal and a draft bylaw. So today's report is for council to approve that statement of proposal so that we can go out to consultation. I don't propose to go through the full detail of the report, but I'll go through some highlights which I think are important to note. As I said, the previous liquor bylaws were due to be replaced in 2018, so it's timely that we have the review now, particularly in light of one of our biggest events coming up in November, and so it would be preferable to have the bylaw in place so that we can control the alcohol around for toast. Our analysis has been conducted with the benefit of some pre-consultation engagement with key stakeholders, and we've met with the regulatory committee and members of the community boards and my standing committee chair, and we've spoken to police, public health, and people affected in terms of the Martinborough Business Association in particular, and controls. And that was really to get a sense of where we thought that where there are any potential issues around the problem. We're required to identify what our problem is, and that it's crime and disorder that is caused or made worse by alcohol. So in particular places or events, we know that people may congregate and may be drinking, and that may lead to crime and disorder. So it's important to note that we're not controlling people drinking, and we don't control people who are intoxicated. It's actually people drinking in particular areas where that may lead to crime and disorder. And so I've put into the report there a summary of all of the areas that were identified, and we basically went through the towns and particular issues and had a discussion with stakeholders around what we could do, what the extent of the problem was and the known problem there, and I've highlighted those through the report. So effectively, the Featherstone previous ban in the CBD area we identified was a historic problem, and all stakeholders, I think that was correct to say, all stakeholders felt that that problem no longer existed, and so a replacement bylaw we would need to have alcohol. We're also aware that there are some businesses who would like to pursue some ability to have a license with outside dining within that CBD area, and that would enable them to be able to do that. There have been some matters that have been raised that we of antisocial behaviour, and particularly around the playground here, and potentially some evidence of drinking in the square. We felt that some of those, it's really difficult to be able to say whether they were alcohol related, and so of course that would be outside the scope of this bylaw. We can only control crime and disorder that is related to alcohol.
Was that must have not been from a stakeholder meeting that I was at, because that was one of the things that was said in ours, was actually that there wasn't a concern with drinking in the square at all with in the evenings. Like we never noticed that people drank in the bars, and if they were walking to a different bar, even through the square, they weren't carrying anything, you know, like in drinking in between or anything like that. So that must have come from one of the other stakeholder meetings, because I mean, wasn't it like, yeah.
There has been there had been some evidence of broken bottles and alcohol bottles in broken bins over a period of time, but it was not significant amount. There have been bottles and broken bottles in the square.
Will the council still be maintaining the no drinking on sports grounds?
So just coming to that, so that was one of the other areas where we felt was outside of the scope of the bylaw. The bylaw in particular, the criteria was changed, which was one of the reasons why we were required to review the bylaw. The Law Commission carried out a review of alcohol bans in bylaws across the country and felt that there had been overreach and that there were a lot of bylaws that have alcohol bans that were not necessarily around alcohol-related crime and disorder. And so they put in provisions that actually raise the bar and the threshold that we needed to identify. And that has to be quite a high level of evidence of crime and disorder in that area. So we felt that discussing with the amenities team and with the police in particular, that playgrounds really is about be a preventative measure. And we don't actually have the evidence to say that there is any crime and disorder related to alcohol in playgrounds. It's more of a social, trying to denormalise alcohol use and drinking around young people, but that's unfortunately not the purpose of this bylaw. So we can't control it through an alcohol ban. There are other ways of doing it. We'll talk about it a bit later on, different strategies that we can employ, and so it'd be more appropriate to deal with that through policies and our own management plans, and working with the users of the playgrounds.
Just as an example, the Waireka Bush Rugby Union have put out as part of their code of conduct that there should be no alcohol present on the sports grounds, and it'd be just nice to be able to back them up with a policy with regards to that. I don't agree that, I agree that alcohol should not be present on a sports ground. It's not the place for it, and it does potentially encourage antisocial behaviour.
If I could comment on that, I think what's quite under 2.2 is that we can't do any bylaw which is consistent with the New Zealand Bill of Rights. So we've got to be very careful what we're trying to do. The police do have powers for public drunkenness that may be more appropriate for, as opposed to the council placing more restrictions on it contrary to other.
So that would also seem to suggest that the Waireka Bush Rugby Union would also be a cultural.
They are, that's a policy within a sporting organisation.
But they don't own the grounds.
In this case, that's to be dealt with Master District Council.
No, this applies to the
I'm a little bit surprised at that. I was at the Waireka Bush grounds on the weekend and I was coming alcohol there.
Yeah, have a look at the code of conduct. It actually states in the code of conduct that it's not.
It's quite separate. Anyway,
if I can respond, there is a difference between the policy measures that we can enforce as landowners, that we, this is a measure that we would like to see or not see happening within our areas, as opposed to a ban, which is a regulatory tool. And it's the fact that it's punitive and that the police can enforce this leads necessarily so to a higher standard of evidence that we need to be able to do.
Really what we're doing is we're pulling it back a bit and we're saying we will react, have the power to react to specific circumstances with correct evidence, as opposed to the likes of the Featherston ban, which probably has passed its time and has continued on for years afterwards.
We're really fortunate to be in a position that we really don't have crime and disorder related to alcohol in our district. But we've always got the ability to review that if there's ever an issue that comes.
And here it says one of the things that you put, the proposed bylaw enables councils to adopt requirements for signage, and so like it may be that there's just, we said if you put a sign up at the playground saying no bottles or whatever, it just makes the public feel like they can actually say to someone, hey, sorry, you can't drink that here, or to keep the children safe, but whereas when there's no signage, you can't really say anything. So
just to pick up on Councillor West's point is there was an initiative done in around about 2019, 2020 for alcohol inspectors and chief inspectors to engage with sports and especially rugby in regards to online drinking or on the sideline for drinking. And it came about through Porora and Hutt when I was there that a lot of the clubs were historically used to put bar leaners up and they were getting a lot of undesirables there. And so it was part of an initiative to go in with the New Zealand Rugby Union and the major rugby fraternity to actually change around that culture. And Waireka Bush picked up this ball, excuse the pun, picked up the ball and ran with it. And they've been very engaging in trying to get their clubs to recognise the association or the historical association with rugby and drinking. They're actually moving it more to a promotion of the sporting events, and it's a family-oriented thing. So it's an initiative that has been run through the Alcohol Inspectorate with local communities and the rugby fraternity as well. And that sideline drinking, we were pushing them back into the licensed area, i.e. their clubs, which meant that their viability increased as well, but also a change of culture as well. So that's where the pickup from the Wairarapa Bush has come through.
Rick, did that have any impact on sponsorship?
In terms of?
Well, TUI sponsoring Wairarapa Bushes.
Well, no, because our focus, well, my focus was more from the inspectorate in that you couldn't drink alcohol outside your licensed area. And what was happening was that the club rooms were, they were buying it from the bar and walking out into an area that wasn't licensed. The particular wins, for want of a better word, was through North in Poiroa, which is probably the biggest club over there and the most well known. They, as I would say, moved from the 80s into the 2000s and recognised that significant change in what they're trying to drive as a club and move that. I didn't see any upheaval from sponsors because we were pushing them back into the club rooms where it was controlled for their duty managers, so it had a direct effect on their licensing regime as well.
That's an excellent explanation, thank you, Rick. Karen, should this be passed, this bylaw, how long will it be valid to? What's the time it's
Under the LGA, we're required to review a new bylaw within 5 years and then 10 years thereafter. So it would be within 5 years. But we do have, and I'll come on to the mechanisms we have within the bylaws. We can make additions and amendments to the bylaw by resolution.
Cool. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Does this, moving it, I noticed that because you've actually put Toast Martinborough by name, in the past every year, we're given the details and we have to put that through. This would stop that from having to happen.
That's right.
But it can be looked at because I know that, ever changing things that are going on and people, looking at different ways to run different events. And so if there was if they were looking at doing a change, you wouldn't want to put through this bylaw that would then shackle them.
No, we can subsequently make amendments to that.
That could be through the council.
Thank you.
So, Alistair.
I have two-part question. The first part is the consultation. How urgent do we need to go out at the time suggested here? Is there? Sorry.
Monday.
No, but it's my query. Okay, so do we need to do that now, or could it be delayed? And if so, because there is another issue that we have said to the public that we will consult on, and I don't want to say what it is, but we all know what I'm talking about here. If we were to delay this and then do consultation on both those particular topics, it may save the council some money, and it would also mean we don't have to wait 3 years.
Separate
I know they're separate issues, but I'm just asking the question, say, is it possible to do this or not?
So we really do need to go out to consultation with this because it is controlled by the Special Consultative Procedure. It's quite formulaic. So in the Local Government Act, what we need to do, and there's a 4-week consultation process, and then there may be hearings after that. So in order to allow us sufficient time to go through that process and get this bylaw in place for Toast, it's very, very tight time frame. So the question is,
the current bylaw is still valid.
No, it's not.
Okay,
3 years overdue.
It's expired for 3 years.
Toast Martinborough has been involved in this as well.
Absolutely, and they're very happy with having that.
So we've got.
Okay, so that's
council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually a question about the recommendation 8. Can I raise that now? Recommendation 8 asks to appoint a councillor who has accreditation provided by Making Good Decisions program as chair of the Planning and Committee. Does our current chair have that accreditation?
You'll have to speak a bit louder if you want to be.
She's super qualified.
What's that?
So does the chair of our current planning and regulatory committee have accreditation under the Making Good Decisions program?
Not under that specific program, and I read this resolution as saying a person who is so qualified would chair the meeting for the purposes of this.
I've misunderstood the recommendation. It's okay, thank you. That was
Which
still good to clarify.
Can I just clarify that again? So that would be Rebecca and Alistair have both attended and got accreditation.
And GP.
And GP.
And GP.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had 3 people, and I think we decided that was sufficient for this council with the cost perspective.
So was it making good decisions with regards to the alcohol licensing?
No.
That's a general regulatory decision. If you want to go on it, give it to me anyway.
Just a couple of points. Point 2.3.4, strategies for addressing the problem. There's a comment on page 45 of the report or page 7 in Stella that refers to 2.2.2. Where's 2.2.2?
Sorry, that was my trigger finger. They were supposed to be 2.3.2 and 2.3.4.
Okay.
Okay. Because I was going to mention that it's a 2.2.
Yes,
okay.
I'm getting my way there. I'm not quite there yet.
Okay.
How come you didn't pick that up?
Do you want to finish on your presentation?
The issue of Martinborough, particularly around the cycling general tourism and our wonderful wine region that we have here has been raised through a number of different quarters. And so we've had a good discussion around trying to understand what the nature of the problem is there, the extent of the problem and any evidence we've got, and whether that would be appropriately addressed through an alcohol bylaw. I think as I noted within the report, it's really difficult to understand the extent of a problem. We do have some safety issues, and there's the concerns that have been listed in the report here around people who are intoxicated and concerns that people may be being served when they're intoxicated in contravention, of course, of licensing requirements. There's people falling off, people's safety, there's safety concerns, particularly around the area around.
It's more speed. Honestly, it's more speed along that Puritanga Road, and it's safety for the people.
Councillor, in that area, I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of
it's actually got nothing to do with drinking.
There's due to the volume of the cyclists on the road and the width of the road and the speed along there, then that's a potential issue. That is just around those areas. There's other concerns that have been raised around people when they're coming back into town and through the other areas as well. So just making sure that we've got all of the information out there so we can determine what the actual nature is. And we've concluded at this time there isn't sufficient evidence of a problem or the nature of the problem to be able to be dealt with by a bylaw, and the bylaw in effect would really only be able to control drinking side loading effectively along the streets or possibly within town, and that could lead to a number of unintended consequences.
Yeah.
We'll just let you continue and then we'll keep so just make your questions.
So stakeholders consider that and officers recommend that it's a good opportunity now because we have heard this for a while, and the potential for the town to have more increased tourism and being able to celebrate the benefits of what we've got, but we need to also be able to deal with some potential issues. So we felt that it was really good to sit down and work with businesses in the area and just understand what those problems are and what we can do to promote responsible tourism particularly in our tourist.
As opposed to making a bylaw specific.
That's right, that's right.
That's where the consultation would be very.
Yeah. So are we going to pause there? We've got a couple of questions. Gary.
Yeah, just two. Well, just definition of public place, does that include areas which are covered? For example, a race course.
Is a race course a public place or is it private?
You talk about applying to a public place, meaning under the section. I don't know what the section says.
I need to look at the definition, which is in the draft bylaw.
Okay. And the other one was, in terms of timing, you confirm we are stuck with the timeline we have there now, which is starting next week and closing on.
It's an ambitious timeline. We want to give everyone the opportunity.
And you'll be going broadly with the engagement with the other sectors, the affected parties. And we're only talking South Wairarapa.
South Wairarapa district, yes.
End of story.
That's
Okay.
right.
So
And,
we could be different to Cardiff.
although I have considered the other bylaws in developing, because, you know, we want to be as
Be
consistent
nice if
as
we
we
were the
possibly
same.
could be. But necessarily each area is going to be different within it, but actually the mechanism of the bylaw, they're very similar across the country.
Okay.
There's not very many ways you can do this.
Yes.
There's no comment about people freeloading.
Sorry?
There's no comment on your.
We can't deal with any of that because we're just council, we're not a.
And does this stop us from being able to buy a tent ban, like, you look at the likes of Castle Point on New Year's Eve where they ban alcohol? Can we do that at any given stage through?
If there's sufficient evidence, and at the moment we've determined there's no problems at beaches, even at Christmas and New Year's, there's.
So, well, I think when you get to the consultation, given that this is a very forward-thinking but not punitive approach, the objectives to this are more like public concerns about drunkenness and the police. Is that a possibility, a fair comment? That really this is not a punitive measure towards businesses, it's quite the opposite.
But I think it's more likely that the response will be people's anticipation, a bylaw will be preventative, should anticipate a problem might happen, or actually the weight in the bylaw making process requires evidence of a problem. And I think that's where the cusp of the debate is, why aren't you taking a precautionary approach in case something happens?
Yeah.
I suspect that will be the weight of the submissions we'll receive.
And that's built in terms of large scale events, because it's obvious there's going to be problems in large scale events, so you don't need to demonstrate that level of evidence.
Given that Toast Martinborough is a privately owned company and also has its own alcohol management plan with the police, is it wise to put it as a specific event in the bylaw?
Having it within the bylaw itself means so that high level of evidence we don't actually have to demonstrate by having it in the bylaw, because it's very difficult to say, particularly because we've had Toast for so many years and an alcohol bylaw for so many years. It's actually quite difficult to demonstrate then that you would have had a problem if the bylaw wasn't in effect. So actually having it within the bylaw recognises that difficulty. If we added something, provisions within the draft bylaw is that we can add by resolution, but we will need to be able to demonstrate those particular areas do have a high level, and an event would have a high level unless it was a large scale event. So it actually is, it's a higher bar if you do things by resolution.
Thank you.
Just a quick one. Does it fit well within the Wairarapa alcohol policy?
Yep.
It does.
They're not the same.
The local alcohol policy
It's
is
more around the
licensing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Identifies places, but due to the licensing regime.
And coming back to your point around it's not punitive to businesses, it is about levelling the playing field as well for all businesses in the area, considering that they're all required to to comply with the same provisions and consider crime and disorder. But the concentration is on the crime and disorder measure itself that is alcohol related.
Ross.
I'm just saying, through you, Your Worship, I think bylaw is an appropriate way of giving council input into these matters, and I commend officers proposing to let Featherston out of the naughty kids locker.
Yeah, I agree.
So
That's
just
because you go.
the rest of the report details the requirements that are required to demonstrate in terms of whether it's justified with at all freedoms, and I take it that you've all read. And
it was pretty heavy reading.
But it wasn't heavy reading.
Very good.
But it wasn't heavy reading.
So just to be clear then on what is in our proposed bylaw is we do propose to have Toast in the bylaw itself. not to have any other areas, like for instance, Featherstone CBD, not to be included and to have no other areas. But there are mechanisms in there to be able to add areas and to amend what is in the bylaw, but those will require that higher level of evidence by resolution, and we have put provisions in there that it will be subject to the consultation under the special consultative procedure. So effectively, you're changing the bylaw, and so it should go through the same process as we go through this now, apart from temporary events, which we would just consider the usual consultation requirements for that.
So we'd have to do this even if all we were doing was letting Featherstone. We'd still need to go through this.
Even if we were just going to have a mechanism that allowed toast to be a temporary event, we'd still need to have a bylaw in order to be able to do that.
And the ban, and the ban on swear.
So we've got
for that day.
9 resolutions here.
No, there's 9. There's another one. There's 9.
But the comments of everyone seems to be, and I assume that you've read all of these. So would you like me to take them all as one?
I'm just wondering though, on Rebecca's point, number 8, you need to change the wording that it does actually read that the chair of the planning and regulatory has to be the RMA accredited.
I think where we were going from here is that the chair, for the purposes of this bylaw, should have the accreditation. They don't necessarily need to be on the planning or regulatory. It could be another council.
So just when it comes up.
So when you are considering alcohol bylaws, then the chair changes for that part of the meeting.
I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, so there's a stand down on an election, and we go carry on with someone with that and make the decisions qualification.
And it could get going for 2 or 3 years.
I think you said appoints a councillor who has accreditation provided by the Making Good Decisions program to chair the alcohol control bylaw 2020 clearance and review process is better.
So we could just entertain the decisions to chair the planning and regulatory for all the purposes.
Correct.
Oh,
Do you want to appoint a councillor now?
No.
It depends on availability.
Yeah, and you may not be here next year.
Yeah.
So we're going to go. Chair the planning and regulatory. Okay with that?
Yeah.
Thanks for that,
Okay, I'll take them as 2 through to 9.
Can I just say something before we vote on this? I'd just like to say to Karen and Rick, I think the consultation that the 2 of you have done and your teams for this bylaw and for the work that you have put in setting this out so that it is an even considered and well documented of the process that has gone through and why you've come to the resolution you've come to. I think it's a very well written report, and thank you both.
Thank you. I'll try and get my paragraph numbers right.
Subject to a paragraph change, and also subject to the suggested alterations to item 8. Do we have a mover to receive? Thank you very much, Brenda. Seconded, Councillor Colenso. Any further discussion?
It is actually to 9.
It is, 2 through 9.
Oh, yeah.
1.
That was an alteration to 8.
Yeah.
And the paragraph. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. We'll now adjourn for 20 minutes for a bit of a break, and then we'll come back to C2 regarding some of the 20 minutes. Yeah, good. Nice old lunch, right? Just see where this people here.
Susan, I'm here.
Councillor I know where Councillor Gills is done. hang fire for a couple of seconds to characterise.
We do actually need to make, and then we do need to put a registration tag on it as well.
Registration tag for. Have you not seen your doorstop?
Oh, no, I have seen your doorstop. It's not registered.
Is it registered?
Not quite, I've just got to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we need. That'd be a fun thing for children to do. Maybe council doorstop dog.
We will need to approve characterise back.
I've just texted and said back on.
He might be having problems if you say back on.
What?
I think Marcus would find it.
Okay, like to know.
All right, we're going to start. We're now considering item C2, we're voting the council resolution permitting the subdivision of Council Land and Greytown report. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor Fox, second Councillor Maynard. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. Now, I've asked the council officers to prepare this report for us to consider. Mr. Wilson, would you like to take us through this report? Councillor Eames.
This is one of those tidy up matters. Quite some time ago in 2000, 20 years ago, on a recommendation from the Greytown Community Board, there was a recommendation to consider subdividing land off around pensioner housing. The main reason for that was to provide screening for the pensioner housing. It sat on, and there was never a decision formally adopted by council to actually make that occur. There was quite a bit of work that had to be done at the time to assess the suitability of the site for subdivision. There was an old gas works or that type of thing. So there's a bit of history to all those things as they were back in time. So currently we have a resolution on our books that says investigate the potential to sell this land, but never a council resolution to actually sell the land. We think it's prudent at this time, particularly given the pressure on social housing and those types of things, not to make a decision or preempt council's decision in the future where it may choose to want to use that land for other purposes like extending the pensioner housing or those types of things. So it's a tidy up. This is on the books, and so the recommendation here is to basically take it off the books, which means the land remains in council ownership. They can do with it as it chooses.
But it's not precluded the sale in the future of the land, but that we actually have an active resolution that's maybe compatible with our decision making going forward.
Given that this was so long ago, and I understand it's still sitting on the books, but is it because it's on the books that it came to your attention, or how did this actually come to council's attention?
So as part of the work that we've been doing in terms of welfare for and housing for at-risk, we were looking at land in Greytown that might be suitable, and we were talking to a charitable developer who wanted to build some houses, accessible houses for charities and so on. This land came up, and then while we were talking to them, all of a sudden we went, oh God, this has been subdivided and can be sold. So we thought, well, actually we don't want this to be sold while we're having these discussions. And it turns out that it goes all back to 2000. So that's why we're going to take it off the books now, so that we can continue those discussions in the future for the provision of
social housing. Is he still keen on the concept?
No, not so much now.
Well, I think that's a matter for future policy on how we want to approach it, and whether or not councils are going to allow to be able to get the government subsidy on subsidised housing, which is a real problem at the moment in Wellington. But it makes sure that we have the options to move on this, whether and secure some of the last land we've got again with regards to social housing, and whether or not that is a council. With the 3 reforms, we don't know whether we're going to move back into the space with it.
But to answer your question a little bit, there are still charities out there that are looking for spaces to do this sort of thing. Whilst the one we were talking to has gone a little bit quiet because of the problems with the land at the moment. Once we do this, we might be able to have that conversation again with them.
But it would come to council. It's not a side conversation, or is it viable?
But we've had many discussions about selling council land and releasing it to private entities. And there's no guarantee that the housing is going to go to those that need it.
And that's exactly the point. This resolution as it stands allows to re-subdivide and so on. And this is saying this removing that resolution allows you to keep the land to council ownership and make a decision on merit about what the best use of their land is in the future. So it's a time.
A lot's have changed in the last 20 years, both on land values and on the affordability of housing. So I think we just need to have a fresh look at this.
Can I ask that the land has actually been subdivided, hasn't it? I mean, it's got separate titles for those.
No.
So that process hasn't actually gone through, even though it was approved to go through.
Yeah.
So
there was a
is that on both properties?
There's a
Yeah, I've got the plan that shows
but it
them.
was never actually went to Lynn's for separate.
It never went to council for a resolution.
Because of the costs involved with doing all the things.
Yeah, I know all the, I've read all the reports.
So it's not separate title, it's one title.
So one title, okay. And is that the same for the Martinborough land as well?
That I don't know. I would have to come back to you on that.
Because I know you didn't proceed to sell it, but did the actual subdivision of the registration of those separate titles
What we'll
happen?
do is we'll do another action item report back on the situation of the Martinborough community flats, surplus land as well. Because that was part of that. We're surprised to see that.
Yeah.
Oh, can I just ask, what size was the land in Greytown? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I think it's 1,300 square metres. I don't know, no more.
No, I'm sorry.
The ones on here, are
I know, I saw it somewhere, I just couldn't.
they? Yeah, I could read it.
Well, so, but this report does say that the Martinborough, they do not proceed at this stage. But that if requested for Martinborough, but if requested by the tenants for reasons of privacy and security, a fence could be constructed.
We'll just get confirmation on that, and just take a picture on what occurred.
Let's deal with that separate. Let's deal with the Greytown matter, keep it simple. Just before you make a decision, I just want to just inform you before you make a decision. So when Anne, as chair of the Greytown Community Board, saw this report, she wanted to come speak to the committee. She's unable to attend today's meeting, but she would like her displeasure voiced to this paper as at the committee level. Her belief is that it should have gone through the Greytown Community Board before it came here. So I just want to let you know. I went back to Anne and said, look, because it's been on the agenda, it's been in the public agenda, council can make that decision to refer it back through the Greytown Community Board, or if decide, actually, given the nature of the report here, it is only yours. So you do have a choice of deferring the paper, putting it back through the Greytown Community Board if you so wish. But you have to ask, does that materially make a difference to decisions before you? That's a process issue.
It's a very good question though, because at that 2001 decision, it did go through the
Community
Board to
Mhm.
come to council. And would you like this to go back to the community board to then also approve or disapprove of?
Is that going to delay? I mean, if it goes back to them, I would imagine that they'll want us to revoke that decision, and then they'll have to come back to us again.
It is, but I think
The process is process. Yeah, and there is no need to.
Okay, well, we should send it back to them.
Yeah.
What is the timeframe if we send it through to the community board and then it comes back to council? So we're in the cycle of meetings with that.
No, it's two. Yeah, it's going to be. It'll
We
be.
missed this one,
Yeah,
so it'll be the next one.
It's 20 years. No, the CEO had to make the unwise decision to proceed with the as it stands, even though it's live. I don't think that there's any risk to us by referring it back to the breaker. Coming into the council again.
I think it would look good to actually see that back to break.
So do I.
Okay,
In the request, yeah,
so I'm gonna.
absolutely.
Through you, your worship, and also ask about, are there any other parcels of land where this is a situation where?
I think that's a separate question. You know, that, yeah, I mean, that's a good question, but this is dealing with a specific situation trying to resolve.
And I think a year and a half ago, we did ask the CEO to look at pieces of land and review them. And that's a long going process, which has been interrupted by a couple of pregnancies, I think. But that is
Excuse me, I'm coming.
There is in train that we are looking at all public land and also leases attached to them and market values.
But my point here is that was actually raised last year.
Yeah.
And now this has come to the surface not through.
It's a long process, so we could allocate, I think, Harry, you could talk to us about allocating more resources or whether it's just a slow burn.
So we do have someone who is looking at our leases, our licenses, or that type of work. I mean, the big pieces of work are things like Papawai, Lake Ferry, Motor Camp, those types of things. We've had the recommendation about Ward's Line, so we're just implementing it, working through them.
Can I just ask a question? Is there any possibility someone could litigate against us to try and force the sale of the land? It's not a proper issue.
Well, it's still that even this resolution requires a decision of council.
Yeah, even
So, you know, someone raised, you've got this resolution, and still a mess that would have to come before you. This simply just takes it off the book so that people can't use that point of entry into the sale.
I guess I was really coming from the fact that if we delay this by 6 months, by going back to the community board, you don't see any risk attached to that.
But you just never know. I mean, that's the point. That's why I want to get the resolution off. But right now, there's no one chomping at the bit around the utilisation of this.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of work to be done, which will take longer than 6 months with regards to geotechnical and contaminated land and easements, etc.
Thanks.
Can I just suggest that if the decision is made to send this back through to Greytown Community Board, that council officers are present that are able to speak to this, because I'm sure that the community board will raise a number of questions, and it would be important that they can be answered in time to not have any further delays.
And I think it's a good thing to raise that we do have potential community land still available in Greytown. You know, community housing land, and I raised the issue on how the community feels about the use of land.
Yeah. There's certainly some good reports on what's happening, what is underlying in that land that will need to be taken into consideration.
So what I'm going to do is propose a resolution to refer the item C2 to the Greytown Community Board for a recommendation prior to considering it at the council next available council. So I move for that. Kevin, seconded Councillor Fox. All those in favour, please say aye. Against. Motion is carried. Oh, that was easy. D1, drinking water. We are now considering a report D1, drinking water storage assessment overview report. Do we have a mover to receive the report? Councillor Fox, seconded Councillor Lorenzo. All those in favour? Aye. All those against, the motion is carried. This report has been prepared at the request of the Assets and Services Committee, and Ewan, over to you, your last council meeting.
Thank you. So, yeah, as mentioned, this is a report that was requested around assessment of our current water storage across the district. It's kind of split into a couple of parts in terms of our current situation, and then a bit of analysis around the future. The report is preliminary. There is further work that we need to do in terms of understanding some of those requirements to cater for future growth. You'll see from the report, especially in paragraph 2.1, where for Greytown and Featherstone currently there is limited current storage, and that's quite part of the reason why supply shocks at Waihini, that actually we need to react very quickly and try to reduce demand in those areas. However, there is treated water storage being commissioned at Waihini that will significantly increase that, and the treated water storage will go from half a day to 3 days, which is also the same for Marlborough currently. As mentioned, there are a couple of bits of work that we need to do in terms of growth, but also understanding the condition and what we need to do to maintain the existing storage capacity that we have. Yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of the update.
Yeah. I mean, this was raised and it's very pertinent with regards to the more, what's the word? When it becomes turbidity, every time that there's a flooding event occurring in Greytown and restrictions, plus also the summer demand. I know we're reducing leaks, and there will always be conservation required in the summer when water is scarce. But what I see there is the bladder, New Titiwā and Waihini, the bladder at 8,000 cubic metres. What is the longevity or suitability of that sort of technology from a long-term solution perspective?
So the bladder was developed because you already had the existing raw water pond, which has been converted to store it, to treat and covered, so that you had the protection of the treated water, so you're not recontaminating it. So it has a shorter lifespan in comparison to a concrete or steel tank, and they'll be looking at that in terms of as part of the VHCA work. However, it was a short-term measure to increase that volume.
What's the time frame when you say short?
The material, like the colour, is guaranteed for up to 40 years.
So it's medium?
Yeah, medium, yeah.
By the way, Lawrence.
That's what it's.
Lawrence Edwards, this so Lawrence has kindly stepped in.
Right, councillors? Yeah.
The pundits on social media are quite wisely postulating that we don't really need Waihini and all its expenses for Featherstone because we've got Bullbush Gully, but my understanding is that it's not ever likely to be usable. In fact, as a hazard, could you update us on what is happening at Bullbush Gully, what's likely to happen?
So currently there's no way to treat Bullbush Gully, as well as there's an unknown risk of cyanotoxins, which is very, very difficult, as well as very expensive to make sure in terms of your monitoring and your treatment. So that's an unknown risk, as well as the reason they went to Tates Creek and Waihini was that didn't supply sufficient to cover Featherstone during dry summers.
Right, thank you.
Would the Bullbush Gully be used as an additional bladder storage for Waihini water for Featherstone?
No. Wrong. Basically, it's too low down in comparison to for.
Okay, so I'll go around the table. I apologise.
Well, do you want to start with your notes?
Sorry,
I'm just curious, where's Hickey Noah?
That's the name of the reservoir.
Hinakura.
It's meant to be Hinakura.
It is meant to be Hinakura. Okay, because I was literally, I'm like, Hickey Noah, what does it even mean? Like, I've never even seen that name before. Sorry, I'm just looking here going, who is that?
Alistair?
Yeah, I think that it represents a a big increase in capability, but it doesn't do anything to address our growing population and our use of water, which is significantly higher than possibly any other district per person. If I'd be really interested to know what Wellington Water's view is, or view on how we're going to, I suppose, wean the population's demand of treated water when they're pouring it on the ground and so on and so forth, because it's just a very expensive way to do your garden and all these other sorts of things. We need to fix that, because then our storage is not quite as critical, possibly.
We certainly need to look at how we can manage demand better. There needs to be a demand side response. It's just an increase in supply isn't going to work. So there needs to be a demand side response as well. And that may, things like water tanks and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's something we can look at in terms of promoting those sort of initiatives. There's an ongoing programme, of course, around fixing leaks as well. That would help fix some of that demand stuff as well.
I think that's ongoing. It's not just we are going to, we have been looking at it already. Would that be a fair point, services?
Yep. But my understanding on it though is that, and if we just use Greytown, for example, I think per head of population in Greytown, we use nearly double what they do per head of population in Auckland.
It's significantly higher.
It's hugely significant. So that's something that we need to address. And
Smart meters will go some way to address that.
I mean, the question is, the fundamental question, there's the minimum, and there's actually sufficient buffering capacity if something goes wrong. So one of the things that the reservoirs do in the system is that buffering capacity, which is really important. So it's how many days of storage have we got if something goes very wrong. And that's one of the balances we have to make in terms of capital investment.
Yeah. But that 3 days gets less and less as our population grows. So it's not just storage, it's actually use as well that we have to identify.
When something goes wrong, and I think previously with water power outages, we fixed that. But when you have your turbulence, all the staff are sitting there listening to the clock.
Turbidity, not
turbidity.
But all the staff are all the staff are watching the clock basically. Very right. So the better buffering we have,
But is this the conversation we need to be starting with our community now and saying we need to be educating them about using less water, because when we get the smart meters in, we will be able to control that significantly higher. But to throw it on and say we've got smart water, we're going to slowly start reducing, that's going to cause a bit of an issue. Maybe.
What you're suggesting, Alistair, is a side twist. This was kicked off, I think, by Councillor Fox wanting to look at our capacities. And as you look at capacity and how things are going to go in the future, then you've got all these side issues about water storage, personal water storage, and all the rest of it. So I'm pleased that only happened at our last meeting. And
I agree with you.
I think we'll go back to a report to Assets and Services about water conservation measures over the next number of years, and let's see that table. Did you have?
The stats that I'm saying here, they're kind of like, are they as of now, this is what we're consuming, or as of now, this is what we anticipate to be consuming?
That's what's being consumed currently in terms of the current. So that's your peak day during summer and your average over the last sort of 5 years. And that's a total volume for the population, not per person.
Very good. We're talking about the same thing. Well, I'm just concerned about the population thing as well. I mean, I guess we can't all crystal balls. I'm just a bit nervous that we're going to have to come back and review this all over again. My gut reaction is that for example, market at 1900 seems very low. Who knows?
Population. So that's part of the next step.
Yeah, furthest than Greytown. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? And that makes me nervous. We have to go back to square one and start again, and we really haven't solved the water problem. You're storing it a lot.
Councillor Flynn.
Harry touched on the fact of resilience in there, and there's two sorts of resilience. There's having enough water, if we have a major event. But how are these reservoirs going to stand up if it's an actual earthquake? How resilient are they on that regard? Because you've got the bladder in a concrete tank, you've got wooden reservoirs up at Hinakura, and so just how can we understand the structures that we've got and how resilient they are in a major event?
And that's covered in, I forget which section, there is something, so there's assessment of the existing plants, reservoirs going on at the moment.
Yeah.
And there'll be needed to be further work to make sure that, because at the moment, I think only Woolwich has been assessed, and it is indicating there's a poor condition, so we need to look at work to refurbish, to extend the life.
So
it's part of our condition assessment, prioritising those very high critical assets, and reservoirs are part of that programme.
So maybe we can have, as you bring next things back to either council or assets and services, maybe you could put in some interim things about what the condition is, and then perhaps some steps about what you need to do and the order you need to do them in to review all those things, just so we get a better understanding.
And that is part of the condition assessment money that was set aside from the water stimulus funding as well. So that's a programme of work that's been ongoing, so we can make sure it's more resilient into the future.
Councillor Fox.
I was picking up on a question from Councillor Clenzo, just so where are we at in the timeline of doing that seismic resilience? So we've just started on Bullbush, but there was a statement in here that the tin tanks are probably not ideal up at the Waihi treatment plant. I guess my concern is when I see something in a report that says they're considered as poor, I immediately look at the risk and think, how quickly should we be getting information that would lead to a decision about replacement, refurbishment? I think that's my first question. I'll let you answer that. How quickly should we be looking at that? And
So
could we expect something more?
That's all got to be completed by March next year, but my understanding is it's just trying to coordinate with the operators to get access to site. So it's within the next month they'll be doing those assessments.
Access over the site shouldn't be too much of an issue. That's good. So just in regard to the bladders that have been put into or up at the Waihi treatment plant and the 8,000 cubes of storage, firstly, my understanding is based on Jeremy Gibbon spoke to this at an earlier report, that they are not something which has been used for public water supply. And they probably wouldn't have been Wellington Water's first choice. I'm really interested in when they are going to be commissioned and what the thinking is around that, whether we would maybe be expecting any taste or odour issues, those kind of sorts of things, because it's really not a technology we've used a great deal. So first question, when are they going to be commissioned and what sort of things could we potentially expect from that?
Yeah, so the commissioning of the bladders has been delayed by the upgrades to the Waihi treatment plant. I actually have a meeting on Friday to get an update on what that is, and it'll be contingent on when the upgrades to the plant will be finished.
Okay.
So I'll know more then and pass it on.
I might be here.
Pass on to someone else.
In terms of the taste and odours, it's similar in terms of the material. It's the same as in the timber tanks in terms of it's a polyethylene material. So it's the same as you'd get from the timber tank. Very low risk to the taste and odours.
Except that the timber tank has timber around the bladder and those bladders are exposed to the environment. So there's no cover over the bladders.
True, yeah.
Okay, cool. One other question, if that's okay. It's just in regard to looking at a location for storage, additional storage for Featherston. I kind of see that as being an area of vulnerability for Featherston because we've got a pipe, of course, crossing the river and we've already been that the pipe is vulnerable. Should we be looking to potentially prioritise additional storage at Featherston now while we're also looking at maybe issues around where that pipe placement goes in the future?
Yeah, so this is, I'd say this is a preliminary assessment around that, and that'll be part of the next stage to understand that.
It's okay. I just really want to be sure that we're all on the same page and asking those questions now. Yeah.
There is also that stimulus funding for Bush to look at the current reservoir in terms of condition, and also what the long-term options would be.
I thought the money was being put to decommission that in the previous council.
For Bush Dam.
Okay.
Yeah, reservoirs are in the same gully, but unfortunately they have a similar name. Yeah.
Jimmy, did you have? No, I'm fine.
I had the same question about timing, but just in terms of our current supply of 0.5, think about other councils, maybe in the Wellington region, does that put us in quite a critical situation, I would have thought, having only half a day's supply?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the concern. That's where we're looking at it, and that's why we do need quite a quick demand side response around some of these things, especially those outages. In fact, I think table 4 talks about some of those benchmarks that Wellington want to use to make sure it's suitable. Well, as you can see, it doesn't meet those benchmarks. That's why we're doing that. Yeah.
So I guess the second question is looking at other options in Featherston, but also just thinking about growth and how you might stagger improvements in our capabilities over time, looking particularly at the growth figures across the 3 towns. Have you got any, is that part of the second part of the report?
Yeah, so it's just preliminary.
Excellent.
Yes.
So when you're talking about the next stage, any idea, like roughly, what's the time frame for seeing that? Because like Councillor Fox has just said about the issues with regards to that pipe, which is the information is going to come out with regards to the vulnerability of Featherston. That's when we're going to find that out. So obviously that next stage one is going to be really, really important, because I think we all know where the vulnerability is in the district, and we want to make sure that it's being covered. Yeah. How far away is that report?
For the Taraniko pipeline.
Yeah, and so the next steps, yeah.
Yeah, so again, that's part of the meeting on Friday, to understand that and next steps around.
Yeah.
I think that report's going to the assets and services. Yeah.
Excellent. So look at the next assets and services.
Brenda.
Yeah. So we really haven't actually discussed the cost of this. So it's fine. Pinpoint in there for discussing how we're going to pay for this, how much is it going to cost, and obviously the timeline in which it's going to take to be installed.
So the calendars are already there. It's just a matter of commissioning and using them. And the upgrades to the treatment plants are already within budgets. So within the existing budgets.
Time.
Garrick.
Oh, just somewhat cynical on table 4. Are we using drinking quality water to that fire to Featherston? Yes, we are.
The same.
All towns.
Drinking quality water and water gardens. Greater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Fox.
Thank you. Actually, my question is also about firefighting capability, and yes, we do use the town water supply for that, and it's always been like that. I'm just, you might not be able to answer this question, but I'm thinking about the times when we can't produce water from our plants and we have got very low water in our reservoirs. What's our ability to meet our required firefighting demand? So given that we've got a firefighting demand of 45 cubes there, so
if you look at what the volumes are in terms of Fort Bush, even though the timber tank at the Waihi is starting to get going down, the Fort Bush is usually being kept full.
Yep.
And that would be 450, so 10 times that 45 cubic meters.
So we can bring water back across the other way.
No,
so the I know that, that's why I'm asking the question. So we wouldn't have the firefighting capability in Greytown.
There is a separate 450 cubic meter tank for Greytown. pay the Waihingi money.
For firefighting capability
Yes.
as well. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you.
And I think also from regional council rules, they're also, they have an automatic right to draw from river, even if
They do.
which I don't write. Because it's
Not my song.
Yeah. Right, guys.
That's right. It was your house, you might. Yeah.
So I think there are any other questions? I'd just like to thank you for getting this information to us so quickly.
Yep.
And certainly it was only raised a couple of weeks ago. And Lawrence. But thank you for your report.
Okay.
Thank you.
And also, this is his last week. So Basil, thank you very much.
It's afternoon tea yesterday. There's a lot of Scottish tartans and flags and green tea. Right, we're now going to considering our report D2, the action items report. Do we have a mover to receive this report? Thank you, Councillor Ross, seconded Councillor Leto. Good. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, motion carried. Councillors, we'll run through this, but are there any questions of officers?
Yes.
Go.
Item 739, the land on Boundary Road in Featherston. The landowners had an offer in place now for about 4 months. Just wondering how we can move that forward. Well, longer than that actually, but how can we move that forward? Are we able to?
I think
that's that land that was.
It's an operation decision. And going through, is there an urgency for us to?
No, I'm really interested in it because the landowner's been given an offer to purchase the land. It's still open. I mean, either there's a decision to purchase or not. And I know that it's through the land and they've built on it, and there's garages and all the rest of it.
With due respect to our learned colleague here, lawyers can take a bit of time sometimes.
Okay. Okay, let me put it differently. Do we have an update?
This matter has gone through the hands of previously Godwin in terms of liaising with the parties, Charles who owns Clear at this stage. And I've met with the people this morning. I've been emailing with them. They've raised some aspects of concern around costs, so I've noted their issues this morning before coming here, and I'll have further discussions as part of trying to bring it to resolution and in terms of prospective sale or prospective purchase.
Okay, that's
good. On an underlying topic, and I'm not sure if I don't think it's there, but we also made a resolution to sell some land on Woods Line. Has that progressed as well?
That's fine.
That's the old quarry. The old quarry.
Hutchins metal pit.
Good spot for Greenway, I would have thought.
I think my understanding, the update that I've had is that neither of the adjacent owners want to purchase it, so.
That's not
mine. Okay, well, that discussion, Bryce is the one that's handling it. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
I know 705 is closed, but I do keep asking about the impending costs to council for maintenance of the cycle trail. And I know in the long-term plan we have some money set aside for the maintenance of the section from along the Featherston area. We don't have any money set aside for maintenance from Featherston to Carterton. And we all know that when this bridge is built, people are going to go, built, thank you, we'll walk away. Now ratepayers pick it up. So we need to have an indication of what is this going to cost us and whether or not the ratepayers want to pay for this. Because it's all very well that we have the conversations about let's build a cycle trail for all tourists, but there's been no discussion around this table since I've been on council and within the community as to whether the ratepayers are willing to pay for this.
Well, I think that's probably worthy of a separate action item report to look at maintenance costs of existing and proposed cycle trails. To get a good picture on what's entailed. Are we okay with that? Or?
Yeah, so, sorry.
Yeah.
So we didn't put anything in the long-term plan for development of new trails because of that very issue, as it was too uncertain about what the future was with the 5 town trails. And that was a decision that was made. We have got maintenance money in there for the existing trails. So you're right.
I get very worried.
Discussion does need to happen if new trails are going to work.
Good, so could we have a report presented to assets and services on this? Additionally, a comparison against what has been budgeted. I also think at the end of this month, the Warrior Trails Action Group are presenting an overall plan, which may then give us some clarity on what's going to be needed and timing as well.
Well, you know, it just worries me that we've got these groups who are going, let's build this, and there's no conversation with the people who are going to pick up the bills.
But I think more information might come out about a legacy investment to cover maintenance of that bridge. So we'll just let's get all the information.
Is that coming out of Carlton or it's coming out of the group?
It's coming out of the group.
Okay.
If I could just make a comment on that. Oh, sorry. The proposal is quite extensive, but also they've built into the proposal, which is just doing its final proofing, all of the avenues for funding, and the way they've structured the report means it's an extremely good document so that we could do funding applications, which may well include some maintenance element. So, and that is, Alex says that should come up in the next few
Let me
minutes.
just need a second.
I think we need to know this.
Are we still on this topic, or do you want us all want to raise more items?
Yeah, I thought as well. I'm just looking here and actions 182, 183, 184, 188, like 197, all from the Assets and Services Committee has everything set. So from the 26th of May, all say action transferred to Assets and Services Committee. Is there a reason why it's come through to council and there's been an action put there and it's going back to the Assets? But there's no update to say why it's then going back to the Assets and Services Committee. Like, I'm just a little bit confused as to. This isn't very clear.
It's very good point. But perhaps there was a reason I can't remember.
So 182.
183.
Yeah, 183, 184. I can kind of understand 182 because that was to provide a regular report to the Assets and Services Committee. So I don't even know how that got here.
Perhaps those action items should have sat on the Assets and Services action items as opposed to council, because the report's going back to Assets and Services consideration. So we've accidentally got some recommendations.
I see. So these shouldn't have actually been on here.
They were raised by council, I believe, during the LTP process. So they'll come here because they were raised at council, but they're assets and services material, so therefore they actually need to be addressed.
And that's why they're going back.
And then they'll come to council.
Right.
As a record.
Thank you, Susan.
Well, notion.
Could I ask a question? They will be after the, they will be. From there,
But added to the action list of assets and services.
So does 183 only need to go to assets and services regarding the pedestrian crossing? I would have thought that needed to go to planning and reg.
I think there is an action item in planning and reg too.
Yeah, I know, but this shouldn't just say it's going to assets and services.
I think it is part of a slightly broader mandate with regards to pedestrian access and pedestrian crossings. Is that
So we had the discussion about the planning issues around the medical centre, and the resolution was to bring a report to assets and services about what the cost of footpath connectivity to that industrial estate would be. But it also related in part to when Mock did their presentation about they basically, their position at that time was saying, well, we're not thinking about pedestrian crossing on state highway because there's no net footpath connection this way. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg kind of thing. So, yeah, that's really where it came from.
Because when I was going through Greytown, and there's actually just before the, it's not RD1, is it RD1? Just past the, and you know, there's actually the part where there was going to be a footpath put. So they've actually already put the little raised bits there just out on the, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's there, and you know how they said, oh, we're just going to look, it goes across to the dairy.
I think
It goes across to the dairy, and so, yeah.
So the way you want to report on this is also if, and when we go ahead with a skate park or rules park, along with the medical centre, it's changing the demand and or expectations from public. So that all needs to be assessed in that sense.
And was raised with them.
It was.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, Judy, their thing was, well, why would we put a pedestrian crossing when there's no footpath connecting that crossing?
Exactly.
So it's tied up with that. The sequencing of events, the should council decide that it wants to bring forwards that.
And in addition to that as well, once the budgets for NZTA are formed at the end of August, we will be immediately asking them to consider a roundabout in that vicinity, and that will also change what our expectations are.
Sorry, just a quick question on 203, publicly excluded minutes. We've noted here Taurua Junction, but are there any other publicly excluded minutes we need to consider at this time?
Oh, I couldn't understand, would have to.
We need to do a clean up and review what can be released.
Yeah, we recommend you go through and determine what.
You'll recall we did it about a year ago. We brought a list of reports through. It's in these now come out with public. So.
Maybe it might be useful to have a little note there which just says regularly review any other outstanding publicly excluded items.
Okay, and just to mention, Freddie, you asked that question about the pedestrian crossing lighting. It is actually here under our 280.
Can I ask a question, Harry? Is the council putting a submission in on the Wahine River Action Group? We have,
and what we do is we had to get an extension. So the timeline to actually put submission, and we put down to meet. So we had a 2-week extension of the timeline for submission. Our intention is, for best of endeavours, is to draft that and circulate it to councillors for any comments they'd like to add before we actually formally put the submission to GWRC.
Are we generally in favour? Is that the council?
I think it can be said at this point.
Yeah, I think you need to wait till the analysis.
Okay.
Any other action item?
Yep, provide advice on a potential conflict of interest with regards to decisions made by the Featherston Community Board. What's it with regards to? It's on the 2nd of June and 236. 236. And it says that they're awaiting further information from council. So I'm just wondering what's that with regards to it sitting here for governance. So I'm just wondering if we can have some information about that.
It was a matter that was raised, I understand, by.
I raised it.
Was it Councillor Plymouth?
I raised it about the chair of the with his issues being employed by Reed. And asking questions about
making comments on.
So just need some more information on particularity of that, so we can investigate it.
But also I added to that by saying that there was a conflict of interest of him approving funding for it where he's involved.
I think if you could raise your concerns with.
Yeah, if you could give us in writing what the concerns are, we can actually investigate.
Just
I thought it was in the minutes, wasn't it?
Thank you.
My concern was
Yeah, so the actual specifics of that, we can get a decision on that. Any others? Right, well, we'll now move on into E1, the Mayor's report. And so there's a few items there for discussion. So the number one was the LGNZ conference, which Deputy Mayor Enns will have a review on. The urban affordable housing scheme is still being developed. It's non-council specific. But it's just more an idea. Will be presented to the Affordable Housing Summit next month in Auckland. And there's been quite a bit of interest both from iwi and from government on that. And I will forward you the presentation when it's received. Mayoral Task Force for Jobs, we've been approved an additional funding for the 21-22 year. We underspent considerably achieving our target in this last year. We haven't signed it yet, but we are looking at a partnership with Ngāti Kahungunu and Rangatane Settlement Trusts with regards to the implementation of a conservation training scheme. And we've portioned some of that surplus money towards that. And very much in the line of the Bay Conservation Trust, which has employed over 200 people and planted millions of trees. And especially with Ramsar status around Wairarapa and Moana, that will be a focus for the South Wairarapa. So that's quite exciting. Again, I've also got the Five Rivers Medical Centre because there was a meeting there, but that's gone back with regards to footpaths. And whether or not footpaths can be created in time for their expected opening at the end of the year. Additionally, community or civic ordinance. So previously, this has been a council function, and I think we agreed to allow community boards to propose through recipients and so we're looking at setting up a working party with the councillor and all the community boards. Is that correct? Yes, yes. And so to get the nominations with the intention of holding the civic award ceremony later on in the year.
So Alex, does that, excuse me, the nominations for community boards, I presume it's a mission that we haven't included the Māori Standing Committee to allow nominations from them as well?
We will extend it. I think the intention was.
The intention would be, but can we just make sure that's specified?
There was intention to involve them in that. I'm just, and the terms of reference, proposed terms of reference are attached. For that, we would want to have a nomination for the council to sit on that community civic awards working group. And I don't know whether anyone wants to put their hand up and say me. Or whether we just like to discuss this, do this at the next council meeting.
What's it for?
For assessing civic awards nominations from the community towards a 2-yearly civic award ceremony, where we recognise people that they've done outstanding service to the community.
I'd like to nominate Pam. I know in the past, Pam has kind of been through it before, haven't you? And I don't know if you've got the time, but you did a wonderful job last time. So I'd like to nominate Councillor Cleanside.
Anyone else? We can change the terms of reference and allow a couple if you wish to. But at the moment, it's not, we don't want to over here. You've got enough work at the moment. And the nominations will come through to council.
Busy schedule allows.
No, it'll be done. Yeah. So anyone else want to?
So this will give him the ability to perhaps create a working group to.
Well, we have got terms of reference there.
Yeah.
They can be altered. If Pam says I want someone else here with me, we can change that at the next council meeting to expand it.
I'd be very happy to support that if you had the time.
Yeah, if you have the time.
Yeah, it's a place to establish that.
So we have a resolution to establish the Community Awards Working Party and adopts the Community Awards Working Party terms of reference and appoints Councillor Colenso to that working party.
So for what year are we looking at? 2022?
From 2020. So
It will be for the period of training.
the period of training.
I'd like that.
Cool. Councillor Fox, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, the motion carried. Do you want to do it?
And I probably should have asked you.
I'll note the resignation of Frank Van Stencil from the Mora Water Race. And I've sent Elisa thanking him for his time.
Has there been any backlash from the removal of the person from?
That's a subject.
We're talking
regards to
Publicly
excluded, so.
Was a public exclusion.
Can I just ask a question about, so his resignation, do we propose to fill his position with?
We will at the next council meeting, if there are nominations come through, pending the next water race subcommittee.
And would Colin come up with some possibilities? Maybe?
There'll be a recommendation from them.
Okay, thank you.
Now, also, we've got appointments. It's been 2 years coming up. And I've just wondered whether or not you want to enter into discussion of this or think about it until the next council meeting with regards to whether there's a shuffling of appointments desired by councillors, or whether you are happy with the current list of appointments is attached to the appendix.
Alex, just wish to note that from October this year, I'll probably be working remotely or replaced somehow. And I won't be available to continue chair of the Planning and Regulatory Committee after 1 October.
Does give us another council meeting to arrange substitutes on that. But thank you for that. So there will certainly be some moving around. And I think, yep.
Sorry, for you, would you? Russ, does that also include the community board position as well? Or the other?
We'll wait until we actually have a formal letter from Ross.
Do you want to add the Power Task Force for Jobs, seeing as it's going to be quite a long longevity thing into it?
That's a very good point. Whether or not we have to have a separate, because this is new under Australia. The Mayoral Task Force for Jobs, it's almost like a working party as well. So there's considerable work involved in managing that. And we may, okay, for the next council meeting, we'll look at establishing something with correct structure. We do run a.
I'm quite happy to stay on it, but I just thought.
Yeah, we do run a steering group of other members of the community, including the principal of Gurney, Youth Justice, MSD. So there is a board as such in place, but I think we should probably officially.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah, yeah.
So the appointment reports, so we'll just hold that off for discussion and you can talk amongst yourselves to the next council meeting. You're okay with that? The appointment, I have tabled a report here with regards to my committees that I'm involved in. A lot of the actual minutes that are available offline. Most of them are too big to actually email, believe it or not, when we get to 175 pages. But there's a bit of a overview of what's going on with them. You will see that in the Rimataka Road Committee and the Rimataka Transport Group, I do raise the issue every time of the bridge coming into Martelborough, whether or not it is still applicable. And I have also written a letter regarding that again, with regards to even though repairs have been done, it's not necessarily fit for purpose, essentially. And I want to overlay this with the Wairaka Trails Action Group plans, and certainly it's dangerous to start this.
Yeah. Crazy.
So there's still an action item that keeps coming up, and I will keep pushing. It's TA or okay.
Is there anything that we can do as council to support you in that, Ella?
It is being done as on behalf of council, as the mayor. But it's a solution to the fact that it's not just a lay down of we'll accept that, but we are pushing for it to go back onto some tranche of work.
Should we do a petition to them?
Certainly if
All
it's.
councillors just turn up with a petition.
If
We have a workshop which we're trying to schedule about I think discussions.
it would be, I mean, if you're going to do a petition, it should be community led, but also the phrasing of the petition and the legality of it is very important. So you need to make sure that what you're petitioning is doable, and also that the registration of petitioners follow a legal. What you'll also, and what you'll see then as well in correspondence is that they have written to the Minister of Police regarding community policing. And I think the concerns are outlined there. I've also written an article on the Times Age today regarding community policing as well. So there's that is another area for public pressure on the Minister of Police and regional with regards to allocation of resources to rural areas.
So is everyone aware what is happening in the three towns?
I think it's part of that letter should be obvious, but basically the allocation of new recruits, which was subsidising or bumping up the numbers in the South Wairarapa, is no longer occurring from rural areas.
Because you know how there's no crime in rural areas anywhere in New Zealand because there's not very many of them.
So anyway, I mean, certainly I would encourage members of the public to be writing to the Minister of Police backing this stance with regards to rural communities.
And also, let's just, and with regards to the letter from Karen, you said that there was going to be your response back was going to be tabled.
I'm rather busy, but I have now got a letter in response which will be emailed out.
Oh, that's not tabled here at the meeting. Okay.
Just Alex, in the issues of total transparency, I'll declare a conflict of interest with a letter to the Minister of Police, given the fact that I am a judicial officer sitting on the court, dealing with issues that come to court. So,
I don't think that's really a conflict, given that's a letter from the Mayor.
Yeah, no, but it's a topic of conversation that I don't want to get involved in.
Can I just ask as well, with regards to this letter from Karen, well, no, it wasn't from Karen, but she supplied it. Can you, is there a reason why the signatories, like if the signatures and the people who had signed it, that's not attached?
I was, when I received,
yes, we were not aware whether when the petition was provided to people, whether they were advised that their details would be then part of public record, and just that hesitancy that it's more appropriate that we actually redacted that information so that we were not then releasing information that was private. Because we had no control, of course, over the petition. But we do have them on it.
Yeah, I'll find out.
So if you're happy. Moving on to councillor. Okay, do we have a member to receive this report? Councillor Colenso, thank you. Seconded, Councillor West. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, the motion is carried. Now we have other reports from
Who's this from? Road safety appointment reporting.
So the road safety report.
Who's that from?
That's
do we have a resolution to receive the reports F1 through F3? Thank you, Councillor Fox, seconded, Councillor Colenso. All those in favour, please say aye.
Yeah.
Okay, motion is carried. Right, F1 reports. Pardon me. Do you want to go through these individually, or do you want to just take them as read, or just ask questions?
Can I just explain that the road safety report is the committee that I'm on at Marston, which is basically road safety, and those are the minutes from our meetings that come up. So they're just for your information.
Very cool. Thank you.
But you'll see a letter in there specifically about buses, about public buses, and the safety of passengers on them travelling at 100 kilometres an hour down the road. And so, yes, they are.
I thought the road limit for a bus and passengers is 90 kilometres.
They're travelling at 90 kilometres, but they are standing.
Yeah, you'll see this is a new agenda item where we're trying to get transparency on what's going on in subcommittees through of forever, we haven't had a lot of reports back, so we know it's in the general item. And I apologise for speaking for work for the councillors involved, but I think it's important that the public can see what's going on in the community.
And there's interesting data in your time, so thank you. Yeah.
So, you've raised an issue. Have there been any suggestions to mitigate those issues?
Okay, so in terms of the safety on buses, this has arisen through two means. If you remember last year, the bus was blown off the road in between Carterton and Greytown, straight through the fence. We were very lucky that that bus was empty at the time, and the only person that was shaking was the bus driver. If you look at the 200, the public bus 200, which goes from Marston to Featherstone, that routinely travels up and down there, particularly in the morning and in the afternoon with the school kids that get on it as well. The law states that those buses are allowed to travel with passengers standing. And we have raised it through here, and schools have raised it through the road safety, and me as a board of trustees on the school as well. So we have written to the minister saying, we got Kieran McNaughty involved, and he supported a letter going to the minister about this, saying it's just unsafe. Transit's view is that they are abiding by the law, which they are. It would appear that this is probably an oversight, saying that when you say a bus can travel around town with people standing, this is just said, well, they can travel at 90 kilometres down a highway standing, and it's probably an oversight more than anything else. But it's in the, I would say it is in the way too hard basket for politicians to get their heads around this.
Rural versus urban.
It's a rural versus urban thing, but we're certainly not going to let it rest, because when you look at the 200 bus, for example, and that's the one that I see all the time, at 5 o'clock, if you or 4 o'clock, if you ever travel on it, it is jam-packed with kids and people coming back from work in Masterton, and they are travelling at 90 kilometres an hour down the highway. And all you need is one accident. And because it's quite topical, because there was an accident down in Otago 2 months ago, which had school kids on it as well. So it is an issue for rural environments, but we're just not getting traction. I think the Minister of Michael Wood probably it's in his too hard basket to deal with.
But there's no difference between that and being in Wellington and travelling between Wellington and Sapatoni and travelling on the state highway there at 90 kilometres standing.
No,
so it's not just a rural problem. It's actually by looking at.
But the concerns that have been raised here are for this district.
So we're happy that that's being dealt with.
Yeah,
we're pushing it. We're not going to let it drop.
Any other
I'm noted down as being on the Ruamahinga Whai Tour as well as the Waihi Action Group committees. There is nothing to report from the councillor perspective from either of those, because the Ruamahinga Whai Tour have not met in this triennium at all, and it's unlikely that they will, because their role was surpassed by Water Resilience Strategy, and the Waihi Action Group equally have just produced the document that they were consulting on.
I think we recognised that at the time of the appointment, but realised that it may be disbanded, but it hasn't.
Yes.
Yeah. So you still sit there. Yeah. I don't know whether my learned friend, the deputy mayor, would like to do a report on conference. Or
my colleagues here. Just 2 quick points on before I lead into that. I also threw in some notices on member reporting. Conscious that we had to report by July 20. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a meltdown with my computer and managed to get one through. So it's really meant how much volume we need. I'm very happy to say I'm the only person who actually got a table. So apart from there.
My report.
Tabled. On the conference, yes, we'll move on to the conference. Once again, I had a computer meltdown, but I had my colleague, Councillor Fox, available to help. And quickly going through that, basically I've given an amended agenda there of the 3 days meeting, which was very worthwhile. The full agenda is online. It's interesting, they had a large number of people speaking at each of these workshops, and it really was worthwhile. There's some that jumped out to me, some jumped out to Rebecca. Jamie Fitzgerald was well worth hearing. I didn't realise he came from Wairarapa until after the speech was over. I have talked briefly this morning with Harry about the Simpson and Grierson publication, which is this one, which we're trying to get available for all councils. It's really worthwhile, indicating what councils think it's. They canvass all mayors and all chairs, and then Simpson and Grierson. Various issues, you know, how important do you think it is? Is 3 waters more important than building homes? And things like that. You know, it was very, very worthwhile. So that one's available as well. The highlight for me was the we had a workshop with Meehan on moving energy out of wastewater into heating homes and buildings, and that was really worthwhile.
I'd also note that there are 67 councils and a number of regional councils. There are 3 attendees, all from the South Borough.
The only ones that we.
I apologise for the number of links have dropped off when I did the conversion, but I'll put that back up. It's well worth having a look at it. It's really exciting what this guy's doing. And he's using German and European technology, and basically using energy out of wastewater to heat homes, buildings, and particularly swimming pool complexes. So that was really awesome, really worthwhile. There's some comments there from Rebecca she may want to comment on going through, but just to finish, I had some comments at the end on the actual AGM, which we had 7 resolutions. All were passed in the last day at the AGM. The last one caused a certain amount of angst because the chair got confused about standing orders, and we started amending for the floor. So I don't know how others felt, but I don't think it really reflected what the feeling of the meeting was. But with regard to 3 waters, lots of discussions about 3 waters.
I was relatively disappointed that the chair of the steering committee was the one that was toning down the statement to the Minister of Local Government regarding the process that. And also I felt that there was a lot of other topics, and I gave my feedback to them that may actually be slotted in, given that it's an expensive time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other things that could have been workshopped, as opposed to just a lot of discussion on big issues that we've actually discussed as well.
And for your information, the next conference will be in Palmerston North.
Nice and easy.
Rebecca, do you want to? Sorry.
Can I ask a question? So there was, from memory, around 6 remits. Where did they all come?
So they all went through except the last one, which was amended, and it was amended by the chair of the review committee for 3 waters.
And that was Mayor Nelson.
Mayor Nelson.
Sorry. Rachel Rees.
Yeah.
I only know that because I read her name in your document.
So think about who wants to attend next time. Also bear in mind it's only in Palmy, so it's almost commutable on a daily basis. When I look online from our reports, we actually have Lucy Cooper, who's our new representative on the Cobblestones Trust. Lucy, would you like to introduce yourself to the council?
Kia ora tātou, thank you. I hope you can see and hear me okay. I'm just beaming in live from Greytown. I feel like I'm at an award ceremony or something. Yes, thank you. My name is Lucy Cooper. I live in Greytown. I've been living in New Zealand for about, I think it's about 14 or 15 years. I'm sure my kids can tell me. And I became a citizen in that very room that you're all sitting in a few years ago. And there's lots of faces around the table that I can see that I'm familiar with. So hello. Yes, I'm very honoured to be the latest board member on the Cobblestones board, and it's a huge opportunity for me to kind of contribute some of my skills and enthusiasm for the place in which I live, not just Greytown, but the whole of the Wairarapa. I feel very fortunate to have washed up on these shores. I have a background in resource management planning, and where I currently work, which is Planalytics in Greytown, we focus not just on resource management planning, but also research in the urban development and housing and resource management spheres, and also community development as well. And so through a lot of that work, I've kind of got to know my community even better. And a couple of years ago, we did a big piece of work on food insecurity in the Wairarapa, which kind of got me out and about and meeting lots of amazing people doing incredible work across our region to make sure people are fed appropriately. But I guess the skills that I hope to bring to the board is I do love a bit of big picture thinking, and I do like to join dots across strategic kind of objectives and frameworks. And what I've noticed in just the last few years that local government, including South Wairarapa District Council and our Wairarapa councils, have become so much better at articulating their strategic direction and how they can work with communities to create incredible places and spaces. And really in that framework, I think Cobblestones fits really quite awesomely. I've been getting my feet under the table really, and what I've realised is what a big table it is at Cobblestones. An incredible bunch of committed board members and the friends of Cobblestones and other supporters in the community, and an incredible ecosystem of enthusiasm and love for their place. And I've been really impressed by that. And I think whilst I knew that it existed, I think it's really kind of taken my breath away. And for example, we had another community day on Saturday. The weather was gorgeous. All the volunteers were there making people welcome. And we had over 850 people walk through the door that day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Fantastic.
And in fact, even though, COVID has hit us all in very unusual and remarkable ways, the one thing that is coming out from the figures already over visitor numbers is this is potentially going to be Cobblestone's best year in terms of visitors. Yeah, which is really exciting. So when I get my act together properly, my next meeting with you, I will present a written report and I'll speak to that. So my apologies for not quite getting my calendar together this time round, but I'm getting there. I think if there's one thing I would like to do as the liaison between South Wairarapa District Council and Cobblestones is impress upon you just how unique and vital a resource Cobblestones is. I think it's a remarkable achievement to create a museum which reimagines a village in one place, but comprised of architecture and items from across the Wairarapa, and it does that with such ease and with such araha. I think it really is a bit of a jewel in our crown. It's #1 place to visit on TripAdvisor in Greytown out of 13, so I think that's pretty cool metric to use. Coming up, we've got the last of the kind of Christmas festival community days. That's this Saturday, so fingers crossed that we have great weather. And I really do want to extend the hand of friendship to you all, and please come along. It was wonderful to see the mayor there last Saturday tucking into fruitcake as part of the fruitcake competition. Can I just say he had you were judging that, but you got off quite lightly because the other competition we had that day was a shortbread competition, and Mr. Blackwell came along, Adam Blackwell. He had to eat a biscuit off of 8 plates of shortbread, so I'm glad he didn't have any underlying medical conditions that meant that he was going to have to be wheeled out, but he did a great job. So we've got the last of those coming up. We've also celebrating 50 years of Cobblestones, which is a huge achievement, and we're just working together as a board and alongside the friends to work out how we can deliver some really special events without breaking anybody's kind of energy levels. I think that's the one thing that I've noticed is everybody gives so much, and people do that because they love the place, but I think we all also acknowledge that as a relatively small group of volunteers, you have to look after each other. So we're just kind of working through what we can do this year to celebrate our 50 years. Also, I wanted to let you know that Cobblestones is breaking new ground in that they've been working with some technical wizards to bring some augmented reality to the village, which is pretty incredible. I've yet to kind of try it out, but in terms of a museum breaking new ground, I think Cobblestones kind of stands head and shoulders above some other regional museums around and about. Also, your community grant funding is open, so you will be receiving an application from Cobblestones. And again, really interested in making it clear in our application the contribution that Cobblestones makes to some of the key strategic directions and community outcomes, and not just of South Wairarapa, but of other councils around the region. I also know that you've got a wonderful community development officer now, who I happen to know quite well, but I'm really keen to kind of just make that connection between Cobblestones and our closest and dearest council even stronger. And I guess on that note, we would love to see all of you there at any time that we're open, or you could get a private viewing, I guess. I'm sure I can talk to somebody who owns a key. I would really love to see you all there on our open days or our special days, and just, you know, get to know each other really well. You'll be seeing a lot more of me, well, at least at every meeting. And yes, I promise to do better on the written report side of things. But yes, any questions? Sorry, I've gone on.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for that. It's marvellous to see one of our representatives actually presenting to us, and we'll look forward to more reports in the future. Are there any questions of Lucy? Yes, Rebecca.
Hi, Lucy. I was there in the weekend and I didn't get any Christmas cake.
Oh, you need to talk to the mayor about that. There was plenty going around.
All of it.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Great. Okay, Lucy, thank you very much.
Thank you. Kia ora tātou. Thank you. Kia pai tōra.
Right, so we're now, unless you want a break now for lunch, which we have gone a bit over time, but if we can go public excluded, do we have a member to enter into public excluded? We have a movement. Thank you, Rebecca. Seconded, Alistair. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, the motion is carried. Before we carry on, we'll just have a little 2-minute toilet break.